Chapter 482. The metamagnet divine light circled around the restriction a few times, and Chen Ong could see through some of it. He couldn't help but sneer in his heart as he thought to himself, "This person is really up to no good. When I look at the restriction restraining him, the clear light is contained within and the Tao rhyme is hidden. It's obviously the mystic door's orthodox three pure ones mana. It's the most neutral and peaceful. On the other hand, although I can't see clearly the person being suppressed in the restriction, there's a hot and poisonous air. Look at the color, it's red and dry. Look at the air, it's mixed and smelly. It faintly gives me a feeling of 1,000 miles of red land and gloomy and dead air. Although he's trying his best to hide it, the corpse stench on him that's similar to the flying yiksha still can't escape the divine light's detection." After noticing so many traces, Chen Ong only needed to use his primordial spirit to calculate 70 to 80% of his origin. He immediately sneered in his heart but didn't show anything on his face. He followed Tan Yun into the eye of the sea and followed the source of the cold currents in the countless water channels. Chen Ong casually shook open the one heaven water banner, and a stream of light wrapped around the two of them, avoiding the 3 stars beauty chi that was reproducing in the eye of the sea. They gradually entered the depths of the eye of the sea, and under Tan Yun's lead, the traveling light drilled into the earth's crust and stopped in front of a glacier. Tan Yun bowed towards the glacier and formed a spell with her left hand to silently pray. She saw that Chen Ong was standing still at the side and thought that it was the bad temper of a disciple of the mystic door. She couldn't help but be delighted. This person doesn't even have the Tao fruit of an itinerant immortal, but he's arrogant and behaves like a disciple of a famous sect. I'm praying to Senior here, but he's not willing to lower his head. How can he please Senior like this? Even if his talent is better than mine, with this kind of personality, he will definitely make Senior unhappy. How could he pass the robe to him? He became even more sincere as he made up his mind. Chen Ong could guess what she was thinking just by looking at the flash of joy in her eyes. He watched coldly and watched to see what tricks the person in the ice would play. Although the person in the ice could be said to be a monstrous devil in this world, Chen Ong already had the appearance of a golden immortal before he was born. In the future, he would be a figure who could split the world apart. Even his greatest enemy was a figure who suppressed the multiverse and experimented with countless civilizations. A mere mortal devil was not worthy of his attention. When Chen Ong saw the 1,000-year profound frost essence that formed the glacier, he was able to deduce many things. So even this group of 3-star beauties were not born in the eye of the sea. I'm afraid they were reared by someone to guard and strengthen this person's restrictions. I've already seen through this person's background. His innate nature is of the fire attribute, and his fate energy is great and different. There's also a hint of corpse energy hidden in his aura. I'm afraid he's either Huaho or Hanba. As a Hanba, he was suppressed in the eye of the sea and even connected to the restriction of the earth vein cold spring. He also reared a group of 3-star beauties day and night. The essence of Mother Xian Feng in his inner core was spat on the glacier to strengthen the restriction. Such means are not inferior to the long-brow spiritual master. This Hanba has been suppressed here for more than 1,000 years, but his spirit and body have not been completely destroyed. He died with a breath of resentment. When he was alive, his power should have been close to that of a heaven immortal. Although his essence has been damaged and his vitality has been greatly damaged, I'm afraid he has already comprehended many principles of yin and yang. After coming out of the restriction, he has the potential to break through the heavenly devil realm and reincarnate into the great Azura Supreme Heavenly Devil body. Previously, when Tigerhead Zen Master came here to steal the essence of Mother Xian Feng's inner core, I'm afraid it was also deliberately misled by someone. When the young man from Tianxian Mountain hit him with the innate thunder, he was probably entrusted by someone to guard the restriction here. As for the person who came here to slaughter the beauty, The person in the restriction taught Tan Yun the method of using Mother Xian Feng to refine magic power. It should all be to break one of the meridians of this restriction. Now, it seems that they actually succeeded. The person that Tan Yun mentioned before is actually colluding with the person in the restriction, wanting to break out of the restriction and come into the world. There is no door to fortune or disaster, only people can bring it on themselves. The South Sea I was connected to the fate energy of the Four Seas, and Chen Ong used the Nine Bends Yellow River formation to suppress the fate energy. The previous 2 times he opened the sea, he borrowed people to block the tribulation and transferred the karma. Now, according to Chen Ang's calculations, this tribulation might not be able to be delayed any longer. When Chen Ong starts to open the abode, the Four Seas will open the tribulation at the same time. It was also under the guidance of fate energy that there was the sea eye to seal the demon. The person in the glacier would never have thought that Chen Ong had calculated so much in such a short period of time. Only when Tan Yun prayed for 3/4 of an hour did a shadow slowly appear on the glacier. As expected, he wore a high hat and black robe, different from the common people. If it wasn't for Chen Ang's Dharma eye that saw through the rigidity of his physical body under his skin and the circulation of baleful aura, he would have been easily fooled by him. This person was probably an impressive cultivator when he was alive, and after turning into a drought demon, he was even more powerful. If he could get rid of this corpse aura and come back to life, he would be the great Azura's undying heavenly demon body, and become one of the most terrifying old demons in the universe. His shadow did not move, but a clear shout came from the ice wall. The overseas itinerant cultivator Gu Haozi is frozen here because of the tribulation. Fellow Taoist, please help me break my corpse. If you can melt this piece of ice, I can pass down all the Tao skills I left behind. Before Chen Ong could reply, he felt a nameless curse power mixed in his voice. If he answered, he would definitely take advantage of this to absorb a bit of his aura, and he would be impeached. He thought, this person is really cautious. Not only does he know how to deceive others with lies, he also knows how to guard against it. It's just that he has eyes but cannot see. Seeing that I'm not a itinerant immortal, he looked down on me. He thought that I'm a itinerant cultivator trying to fool him. His words are very explicit, and his methods are not clever. He made a virtual aura and sent it out along with his answer, "Is what you said true?" He saw that Gu Haozi looked down on him, so he also put on a lawless, arrogant and willful look, completely imitating the look of a spoiled disciple of the righteous path. He did not need to figure out a lot of acting skills. As long as he imitated 80% of Wang Ming's look, there would be a lot of similarities. He imitated Wang Ming's look back then. He raised his chin and said disdainfully, "You're just an overseas itinerant immortal. What's so special about your Tao skills and treasured weapons that are worth my attention? Don't talk about this. I'll just help you out a bit on account of our friendship." There was nothing wrong with what he said, but his tone was too domineering, causing the female cultivator Tan Yun to turn pale with fright. She thought, he wasn't like this just now. Could it be that he was just suppressing himself, and now he's showing his true nature? He obviously wanted to help, but why did he make it look like we're enemies? But then she relaxed a little. After all, he's a disciple of a famous sect. It's natural that he wouldn't fight with me for the Tao book inheritance. I've underestimated him. I didn't expect that he would look down on the things that I value as much as my life. Chapter 483. Chen Ong only sneered in his heart. I do know of one Yang treasure. It is condensed from the 10,000-year-old Yang essence of Misty Mountain, but that 10,000-year-old warm jade was left by Changmei to his lover in his previous life, the reincarnated body of the Nine Heavens demoness Chen Ziqin, Li Yingqiong. Moreover, Li Yingqiong is my disciple's disciple. She is decisive in killing, which suits my temperament. How can I let you cheat such a good thing? He only smiled faintly on the surface, and flicked his finger to release the samadhi fire of refining devil, and said loudly, "Yang treasure can nourish the body and strengthen the Tao foundation. How can it be easy to obtain? But I do have a treasure of the essence of fire. I wonder if it is suitable?" He rotated the samadhi fire in his hand, sprinkling many sparks. It was so beautiful that Tan Yun was dazzled by it. The samadhi fire of refining devil could melt the ice that sealed Hanba's heavenly corpse. There was no joke more ridiculous than this in the world. If this fire burned, would it melt the ice? Or would it refine the devil? If Hanba was not afraid that the true samadhi fire would melt his body and damage his essence, of course he could give it a try. In this world, other than the purple-green Tusita fire that Li Yingqiong obtained in the future, there was nothing else that could restrain Hanba better than this true samadhi fire. If it was not for the fact that Chen Ang's true samadhi fire was not mature enough, with Hanba's current weakness, it was not impossible to burn him to death. Even so, this unrefined true samadhi fire had the possibility of destroying Hanba's Tao foundation. Gu Haozi did not dare to let him try, he quickly said. "This fire is powerful, but its power is not mature yet. Even if it breaks through the 10,000-year-old Hanba's prohibition, it will not be able to protect my body in time. Please try another fire attribute treasure. It would be better if it is neutral and mild. Fortunately, I am not in a hurry. Please pay more attention, my two young friends." This time, he already had a 50 to 60% chance of breaking out of the seal. If it was in the past, it would have been more urgent to win over Chen Ong. But now, there were 3 or 4 waves of people who wanted to let him out. Chen Ong and the others were the spare tires, so why would he take the risk? The two of them each had their own ulterior motives, and they tacitly changed the topic. Tan Yun took the opportunity to mention Chen Ang's previous guess that the invader might have practiced the Blood God Sutra. Gu Haozi pondered for a moment before saying, "Ever since Deng Yin and his disciples were imprisoned, and the Blood God ancestor has not appeared for a long time, the Blood God Sutra has not been circulated in the world. Could it be that Deng Yin has unsealed himself? Or did the Blood God ancestor have other inheritances? Listening to your description, this really seems to be the most powerful magic in the Blood God Sutra. This blood shadow divine technique is extremely vicious. This old Taoist will have to ask the two of you to investigate it." He continued, "If it's really the magic of the Blood God Sutra, this matter will be extremely dangerous. The two of you must not act rashly. My slough is sealed in ice, and I can't send out many treasures. I only have one escape technique that I can teach the two of you. This escape technique is a simplified version of the fastest spiritual light escape technique of the mystic door. It's called the Ice Soul Divine Light Escape. With this to protect yourself, you can escape from the hands of the demonic disciple even in a dangerous situation." After saying that, he really transmitted a spell formula into the ears of Chen Ong and Tan Yun. Chen Ong quietly activated his primordial spirit and saw that this spell formula was basically the same. However, a few key points seemed to be compatible with his impeachment curse Dharma access, and there were some hidden traps. At the side, Tan Yun was overjoyed. She never thought that she would be able to obtain such a true inheritance. She was even more loyal to Gu Haozi, and she was only short of raising her hand to swear to find out the whereabouts of the demonic person. On the other hand, Chen Ong thought more. With Gu Haozi's actions, he must have slept in the same bed as the person who saved him. He might not even know the true origins of the person, so he was more guarded than others, and Chen Ong could be considered as one of the chess pieces he prepared. If Gu Haozi could take this opportunity to spy on that person's background, he would be prepared if he were to fall out with him in the future. Chen Ang's plan was even deeper. He was feigning civility with this old monster. 80% of it was because he had taken a fancy to the demonic body that the old monster had cultivated for many years. This was also an extremely daring plan. Ordinary people were afraid of this old monster, and could not wait to escape. For someone like Chen Ong who wanted to refine the old monster into his own refined corpse, it was not enough to describe him as a person with great skill and courage. This drought demon was experienced, and its nature was excellent. If Chen Ong really refined it into his own demonic god, a demonic god of the level of the great Asura supreme demonic body, it could be said to be the most powerful demonic treasure in this world. Even if an ordinary person obtained it, he could go to West Kunlun and call himself a demon ancestor. With such a good material, there were 3 levels of utilization. The lowest level was of course to destroy the Hidorigami's self-consciousness and refine it as an excellent zombie. Although the Hidorigami obtained was considered powerful, it had already lost the possibility of transforming into the great Asura supreme demon body. It was really a reckless waste of such a good material. The middle level was naturally to restrain Gu Haozi's consciousness and use the most profound method of refining demonic gods to refine him. It would make him beg for death, but he could not. In one move, he would become one of the most powerful demonic gods of the formless demonic path. The disadvantage was that the drought demon's consciousness would resist, and it would delay the time of transformation. It would take a long time to refine, and it would also damage one's potential. The highest level was what Chen Ong was plotting now. He wanted to let Gu Haozi become Chen Ang's refined corpse unknowingly. Even his consciousness would be refined into something like a talisman or spiritual consciousness. He would turn from a living being in the world into an existence like an object. Because it involved the Tao of creation and the transformation of the body, not only would it not damage one's potential, it would also have another magical effect in Chen Ang's hands. Both of them had ulterior motives. Other than Tan Yun, who was unaware, they were actually competing to see who was more scheming. Currently, Chen Ong was far ahead of them. He had even vaguely grasped a trace of the main deity. Although there was no evidence yet, according to Chen Ang's primordial spirit, there was indeed something strange about it, and it was definitely related to the main deity. Gu Haozi guided Tan Yun to inhale and exhale the 10,000-year-old cold essence from the glacier and refined it into traces of icy divine light. Chen Ang's Xianming real water could freeze the heaven and earth. It was far superior to the icy divine light. Although he knew that Gu Haozi had the intention to wear down the prohibition on him, Chen Ong still used a limited amount of the cold spring's essence. He even secretly collected the remaining 3 stars beauty and placed them into the yellow river of 9 Bends formation. In order to gain the upper hand, Chen Ong silently merged the yellow river of 9 Bends formation with the Eye of the Sea. Although the formation was not activated, Chen Ong could activate the formation with a single thought, trapping everything in the Eye of the Sea into the formation. If Gu Haozi wanted to break through the prohibition while Chen Ong was not around, he would find out that there was a more terrifying formation outside the prohibition. Although Gu Haozi could sense the slight changes in the Eye of the Sea, he was a zombie after all. He did not have a primordial spirit and was not as sensitive to the mysteries of heaven as a cultivator. An anomaly like Chen Ong could even scheme against a cultivator, let alone him. Chapter 484. Chen Daoyu, that enemies' whereabouts are unpredictable, we don't have any clues. The 4 seas are vast, how can we find him? Moreover, the Blood God Sutra can be released and released freely, we might not be able to recognize him even if we meet. Sister-in-law wants to see you, the most talkative girl, Yan Qing. Can you come to my temporary abode for a discussion so that I can complete Senior's request? Tan Yun stared at Chen Ong with her beautiful eyes. She knew that the mana of this mystic door elite was 10 times stronger than her. If she really wanted to save Gu Haozi, she would have to rely on Chen Ang's strength. There were a few obstacles that were the most difficult to refine Gu Haozi into a refined corpse. Chen Ong also needed to make some preparations. Now that he had that person's reputation, if he sneaked into the Eye of the Sea, he would be sent to Chen Ong, so he was not in a hurry. He smiled at Tan Yun and said, There's no hurry, let me first set up the prohibition to prevent that person from sneaking in. As soon as he finished, he threw the one sky water banner in his hand and turned into a stream of light that went into the eye of the sea. In an instant, a thick fog suddenly appeared on the sea. It was as dense as clouds and the chi of water essence was rich. Chun-Ong pretended to make gestures and chanted incantations, but he actually absorbed the 9 mother wind chi essences that he collected previously and sent them into the prohibition one by one. Suddenly, a strong wind blew on the sea. The 9 mother wind chi essences were bound by the prohibition and gradually passed through the eye of the sea, forming a huge waterspout that sucked in the sea surface. Countless Gui water essences were condensed into thunderballs by Chun-Ong and thrown into the waterspout. Gradually, the wind and water calmed down and the sea surface calmed down. However, Tan Yun knew that if someone touched the prohibition, many of the tricks that she had accumulated previously would burst out at the same time. Even if it could not hurt that enemy, it was enough to warn them. Chun-Ong stopped and smiled. I've set up a shapeless fog in this eye of the sea, ordinary sea beasts and ships passing by won't disturb. If a cultivator enters the eye of the sea, he will see the 3-star beauty transformed by my talisman. If his magic power is activated, it will cause the Mother Wind Essence Chi and the 10th Water True Thunder to attack at the same time, which is enough to stop him from coming to us. Tan Yun nodded and agreed with Chun-Ang's meticulousness. After the arrangements were made, the two of them flew towards a nearby deserted island under Tan Yun's guidance. Chun-Ong noticed that Tan Yun's flying sword light was dim. Obviously, the quality was not good. Not only was the flying speed of the sword light slow, but its spirituality was also lacking. Tan Yun, on the other hand, didn't think much of her own sword ray. She had seen flying swords like this when she traveled overseas. She only saw the pure water-colored sword ray around Chun-Ang's body, and she was very envious. She thought to herself, Chen Daoyou's sword ray is the most pure color and has the most spirituality that I have ever seen in my life. That banner-like magic treasure of his earlier spread out to cover dozens of kilometers, and it's extremely fast in the water. It's clear that it's extraordinary. Not to mention that golden ship magic treasure. I heard that ships, palaces, buildings, and pagodas are the rarest magic treasures, and the materials used are more abundant than the other small items. Moreover, their bodies are huge, and it's harder to cultivate spirituality. For Chen Daoyu to have such a magic treasure, it's obvious that he's very rich. Immediately, she felt ashamed in her heart. I'm just a short-sighted person. I thought that Chen Daoyu would covet my opportunity and compete with me for Senior Gu Haozi's treasure. With his wealth, how could he be interested in such trivial things? In order to pass the fire tribulation, Senior Gu Haozi must have destroyed some of his precious magic treasures. Only a rogue cultivator of the unorthodox school like me would treat it as a treasure. Thinking of this, Tan Yun couldn't help but blush. She saw that the deserted island where her cave abode was located was already in sight. She quickly pressed down the sword ray, lowered her head and went into the cave abode. The deserted island was only dozens of kilometers wide. It was tall in the east and short in the west, and at the top was a cliff that faced the sea. The female cultivator, Tan Yun's cave abode, was in the middle of the cliff. Through the mountain, the front cave opened to the inside of the island, and the back cave could directly see the sea. Inside, there were tables, chairs, and beds carved from stone. The furniture was all covered with large pieces of fur cushions. There was a crystal lamp in the middle of the cave abode that emitted a bright light that illuminated the entire cave abode. When Chun-Ong stepped into the cave abode, he stepped on a piece of soft cotton. It was the best white bear skin of the North Sea. In Chun-Ang's eyes, Tan Yun's mana was only third-rate, but her usage was already comparable to that of a noble. Compared to the many luxuries of the future, it was just a little less novel, but more exquisite. In fact, any cultivator didn't need to worry about money. There were many uncivilized places in the world that only cultivators could go to, and the resources there were much more abundant than in the mortal world. Many of the unorthodox sects overseas, because they didn't know the principle of frugality of heaven and earth, and didn't ask for the number of tribulations, sometimes had more abundant resources than the orthodox mystic door. The two of them sat in the cave abode, and Tan Yun brought tea over. She personally poured it for Chen Ong before saying, "Chen Daoyu, the Yang Harmony treasure and the essence of the true fire that Senior Gu Hao needs to unravel his corpse. I've been searching for it for 10 years, and I've only heard of the scarlet crow ball that Long Brow spiritual master made 1,000 years ago, the golden crow divine fire from ancient times, and the inner core of Senior Golden Beard slave from the Purple Cloud Palace in the South Sea. As for the Yang Harmony treasure, I've never heard of it. Not to mention that these 3 treasures are in the hands of the senior individual immortals, there's also a big sect like Amei. How are we going to ask for it? Just the Yang Harmony treasure alone is a huge chasm." Hearing this, Chen Ong pretended to frown and said, "The reason why Gu Hao wants this Yang Harmony treasure, I've also guessed a little about the inside story. It's nothing more than his corporeal body dying, and his primordial spirit being invaded by the cold air. He needs a gentle and moderate yang qi to nourish his primordial spirit and warm his corporeal body. If this problem can be solved, he doesn't necessarily need this kind of treasure." The female cultivator, Tan Yun, was even more confused. The Yang Harmony treasure was already a mirage, and a treasure that could solve the problem of Gu Hao's primordial spirit and corporeal body was even more unheard of. She didn't know why Chen Ong mentioned it. She only heard Chen Ong continue saying, "The primordial spirit is invaded by the cold air. If there's a Yang Harmony treasure to warm it up, that would naturally be the best. But if there's no such thing, there's no harm in giving in a little. I have a spell called the Tai Yin Form Refining Technique, which is the Maoshan Shangqing sect's true legacy spell. It can be used to attach the primordial spirit to the moon and refine one's corporeal body into the Tai Yin godly form. It has other advantages. Fellow Taoist Gu Hao's primordial spirit is invading the cold air and refining it with the Tai Yin form. Not only is it harmless, but it's also beneficial. In this way, he'll achieve the Tai Yin body, and he'll no longer be affected by the cold air. He'll be able to walk and reincarnate like a normal person, but it'll be harder for him to ascend. But since he's plotting to reincarnate, it won't be a hindrance." Tan Yun was confused. She only knew that what Chen Ong said was impressive, but she didn't understand the inside story. If Gu Hao was here, he would have already understood what Chen Ong meant. The so-called Tai Yin body was nothing more than a different kind of refined corpse. The Tai Yin form refining technique had been passed down for a long time. Early in the ancient times, there were witchcraft that refined one's body into a dead object in order to seek longevity. The so-called Blood Clan in the extreme west and the Flying Yiksha in the east were all like this. The Tai Yin form refining technique was the best of this path. It even refined death into life, and refined the primordial spirit to attach to the shell. It was the method of the ancient Qi cultivator's primordial spirit to reside in the world, and the corpse's body was refined into the Tai Yin body that nourished the primordial spirit. Chapter 485. However, these seniors who cultivated the Tao were not like the wild drought demons. They were slow-witted and did not have much knowledge. Each of them had accumulated years of experience and were extremely intelligent. If it wasn't for Gu Haozi turning into a drought demon and using a mouthful of corpse qi to blind his primordial spirit and heavenly secrets, Chen Ong really did not have the confidence to scheme against him. Fortunately, his primordial spirit was sealed now. It was good enough that he was left with 40% of his original intelligence. However, if he were to use the body of a drought demon to revive and transform into the great Azura Supreme Demon body, his primordial spirit would merge into the undying demon body. With just a subtle demonic thought, he would be able to give birth to countless cunning, intelligent, vicious, and stubborn thoughts. Scheming against him would be as difficult as ascending to heaven. Great Asura demon path and Mahasvara demon path were orthodoxies that were entangled with Buddha. Many bodhisattvas and sons of Buddha had suffered losses in their hands. How could they be so easy to deal with? When the demon path cultivated to this level, although their hearts were still stubborn, their wisdom and willpower were not inferior to the arhats and bodhisattvas of Buddhism. They were even more cunning. It was also at this time that Chun-Ong was coincidentally able to encounter a drought demon zombie that was about to transform into a great Asura, but had stopped at that step. This gave him the possibility to refine a great Asura supreme fiend god that had never been seen before in this world. Based on this, Chun-Ong could be called a great master of the demonic path that shocked the ancients and dazzled the contemporaries. If Chun-Ong wanted to take Gu Haozi in, he still had to make many other preparations, so he said to Tan Yun, "Although we are only guessing the technique that person cultivated, it is definitely not the demon path's method of stealing blood essence and blood sacrifice. Since he discovered Gu Haozi's primordial spirit, which is very beneficial to him, he will definitely not give up. To prevent any accidents from happening, he will probably come back frequently to probe. Although I am not afraid of him, I still have to be careful of such an evil technique. This demon refining Samadhi fire is a rare true fire that can restrain many demon path techniques in this world. I relied on this fire to have the possibility of refining that person to death. However, this true fire is not mature yet, it still needs a lot of hard work. I want to find a place to practice. Do you know if there are any high mountains nearby that I can collect the sun's true fire?" Tan Yun didn't have time to think and said, 50,000 miles from here is Hainan Island's Five-Finger Mountains. Among them, Motherly Peak is 100,000 feet tall and can be considered one of them. The second is the blessed land of Luojia Mountain in the Southern Sea, which is the most beautiful. The third is the nearby Black Sand Sea's Shao Mountain. Even though it's only 50,000 feet tall, it's the closest and can be returned in a day. When Chun-Ong heard this, he smiled and said, "The rest is too far away. Harvesting the sun true fire is not a big deal. If the matter of the sea eye is delayed, it will be my fault. It's better to choose a place that's closer. I'll have to trouble fellow Taoist to point the way to the Black Sand Sea's Wu Mountain." Tan Yun conjured a sea map and pointed it at him. She saw that Chun-Ong was not as arrogant as before and instead showed a bearing, so she mustered up her courage and said to him, "Chun Daoyu is knowledgeable and has vast knowledge. Are you willing to tell me about the Ice Soul Divine Light escape technique that Senior Gu Haozi taught me?" Tan Yun is ignorant and actually can't understand it. Chun-Ong pondered for a moment and agreed, "This is not difficult. Also, your natal mana is very heterogeneous. Even though you have the jellyfish's essence to refine it, your foundation is still wrong. There are actually more than 40 true talismans of mana, and many of them overlap and interfere with each other. They are huge and bloated and hard to operate. They are messy and can't be used. You can take the opportunity to refine them and lay a foundation." When Tan Yun heard this, she was overjoyed and said, "Is that true?" She blurted out her excited words before she thought it through. Then, she felt that her choice of words was inappropriate, so she quickly tried to remedy it. "I didn't mean to question you, I was just too happy for a moment and became silly. Chun Daoyu, I heard people say that the Dao Foundation has no regret. When I entered the Dao, I only had a scroll of unorthodox techniques, so collecting qi to enter the Dao was a little heterogeneous. After that, I coveted a lot of convenience and randomly practiced some spells. I even mixed up the true talismans, so there are dozens of true talismans of mana, and they are not systematic. After that, I suffered a lot of bad consequences and was filled with regret. If you have a way to help me rebuild the Dao Foundation, I will be grateful to you." Tan Yun will never forget it. Chen-Ong waved his hand and released a wisp of icy soul divine light from his fingertip. The clear and bright divine light was like an ice centipede, flying up and down around Chen-Ang's finger. Then, with another wave of his hand, 15 true talismans flew out from the divine light and hovered above his hand, bobbing up and down. Tan Yun looked at these 15 true talismans in a daze. Her expression was joyful, and she quickly concentrated and memorized them. Then, she heard Chen-Ong say, "When cultivators visualize talismans and cultivate their qi into talismans, there will be corresponding supernatural powers." Later on, there were people who refined the talismans into seeds and merged with the primordial spirit, so it can be said to be the true life talisman. Raising one's hand or foot, there will be talismans corresponding to it, so there is no need to concentrate and think. It's just a talisman, and it has a single effect. Therefore, the ancient cultivators of qi only had 1 or 2 extraordinary abilities, such as riding the wind, burning themselves, prolonging their lives, or turning invisible. Later on, there were almighty people who combined several talismans, and with just a few basic talismans, they could form endless spells, which is the so-called mana. And the Tao Foundation has no regrets. It refers to when a cultivator becomes an itinerant immortal. The mana of one's life enters the primordial spirit from the flesh body, and the foundation is planted on the primordial spirit. Other than reincarnation, there is no other way to change it. Chen-Ong smiled indifferently and said, "Therefore, there is still time to change the mana of fellow Taoist. It's just that in the future, you will have to put in 10 times more effort to erase the traces of the original foundation." When Tan Yun heard this, she did not have the time to think about other things. She nodded eagerly and said, "There are gains and losses from the previous fate, so it's only natural. Tan Yun does not dare to plot anything else. I only ask fellow Taoist to help me rebuild my foundation, and that would be a great favor." Chen-Ong nodded and said, "The Ice Spirit Divine Light Escape Technique passed down by Senior Gu Hao Zi is considered a superior mana of the unorthodox school, but it's a pity that it only has 1 spell, and lacks the basic mental cultivation method. There should be 24 natal talismans, but there are only 15 in the Escape Light spell. Among them, there are 12 Divine Light talismans, 1 is missing, and there are only 4 Ice Spirit talismans. If it is used as the foundation, there will no longer be the mana of the Ice Spirit Divine Light spell that can freeze all things. It will only be left with clear ice, and a part of the pure foundation. Although there will be help in the cultivation of ice and water spells, it will not be as powerful as the original, and will be reduced to the middle stage." Tan Yun said frankly, "How is it compared to me before?" Chen-Ong smiled and said in understanding, "Of course it's better than countless. Fellow Taoist's previous foundation was mixed, and it was considered the lowest of the unorthodox schools. After changing to cultivate the Ice Spirit Divine Light, you have the potential to become an itinerant immortal." Tan Yun nodded and said excitedly, "Then how would I dare to hope for anything else? I would also like to ask fellow Taoist, if you obtain the Ice Spirit Divine Light's foundation mantra in the future, can you still change your cultivation?" Chen-Ong thought for a moment, then raised his head and answered, "It's fine before becoming an itinerant immortal, but after becoming an itinerant immortal, there will be opportunities." Tan Yun thanked him profusely, and her gratitude towards Chen-Ong went straight into her heart. She was an itinerant cultivator, and she knew the fickleness of human nature the best. With such a benefit, she could steel her heart and ignore everything else, and follow a straightforward and resolute path. Now, even if Chen-Ong asked her to give up Gu Hao Zi's orthodoxy and transfer it to him, she would probably be willing. In the next 3 days, Tan Yun broke her previous foundation under Chen-Ang's guidance. Relying on the cold power in the cold spring of the Ci, she refined the jellyfish essence that she had absorbed before and transformed it into a beam of Ice Spirit Divine Light mana, and rebuilt her foundation. Although she lost 80% of her mana after this stage, her cultivation went smoothly, and she improved by leaps and bounds. With the Ice Spirit Divine Light's escape technique, she was fast and did not have to worry about being caught. Chapter 486. The Black Sand Sea was a dangerous place. The sea was filled with sharp reefs and the sea was dark and gloomy. Under the sea, the terrain was rugged. There were cliffs and mountain ranges everywhere. The main peak was 5,000 feet above the sea, and was called Shao Mountain by the sea merchants. There were also vicious sharks and fierce dragons. There were many man-eating sea beasts. It was really a forbidden place for the merchants of the four seas. There were many such dangerous places in the world. Mortals lived in secluded corners. Even if there were merchants who traveled all over the world, they could only find a slightly safer route. Even this kind of business was a job with a slim chance of survival. As a result, the Ming dynasty's territory was only 1/1000th of the size of China. It was the most prosperous country in the four seas, and it was called Middle Earth. There were billions of places in the world of Shu Mountain, but only 100,000th of it was explored by mortals. The rest were places where cultivators came and went. That was why the cultivators were the main characters in this world. In such a treacherous place, it only took Chen Ong 3 minutes to land his sword light on the top of the mountain. The main peak was as dangerous as the edge of a blade. It was completely bare rock, and there was no vegetation at all. The sea breeze was cut by the two knife-like sides of the mountain, making a strange sound. Chen Ong stood on the top of the mountain and saw that the mountain breeze was so strong that even the accumulated snow could not accumulate. He waved his hand and released a ray of tiny magnetism divine thunder to open up a piece of flat land. He then waved his hand and took out a bronze mirror from his sleeve. He placed a prohibition on it and fixed it in the middle of the mountain. The fierce mountain breeze went around this place. He then called out Lingsha from the Yellow River of Nine Bends Formation and said to her, "I want to refine the true Samadhi fire and set up a formation to collect the true fire of the sun. Because I have something else to do, I sent you to guard this place. Although the Tai meteoric mirror is only a prototype, it can store the true fire of the sun on its own. You just have to practice it every noon. If you do this well, I will bestow this mirror to you when you return." As soon as he finished speaking, he transmitted the incantation into her heart and searched for another direction to escape. Sacrificing and refining the true Samadhi fire was only a small matter. The most important thing was to prepare the items for Gu Hao Zi to cultivate the lunar form refining technique. One of the lunar divine pearls was the key to Chen Ang's plan, so he still had to find and refine it. The Taiyin form refining technique was a technique to support the moon and refine one's physical body and primordial spirit. A Taiyin star was the key, but Gu Hao Zi was sealed in the sea and could not see the moonlight. How could he cultivate like this? Moreover, when this technique was being practiced, the great Yin star would react, the full moon illuminating tens of thousands of li, not missing for several months, the disturbance extremely great. There would be endless external tribulations coming to disturb him. Gu Haozi was sealed by someone, so how could he dare act like this? The only way was to refine a divine moon pearl and pretend to be a bright moon. Then, he would place his primordial spirit on it and refine his corporeal body. Finally, his primordial spirit would return to his corporeal body. Then, he would borrow the divine moon pearl to refine his primordial spirit and achieve the true form of the great Yin. There was no doubt about it. If Chen Ong did not activate the restriction, there was a possibility that he could succeed. Otherwise, he could not even think of deceiving a 1,000-year cultivator like Gu Haozi. However, Chen Ong only wanted him to complete the first step, which was to refine his corporeal body into the true form of the great Yin. When it was completed, he would activate the restriction in the divine moon pearl and cause Gu Haozi to be possessed by the devil while refining his primordial spirit. Then, he would refine himself into Chen Ang's divine demon of Yin. Then, he would borrow a bit of the true form of the great Een and use the true fire of the sun to burn it for 49 days. He would shed the nature of Hanba and cultivate the great Azura's supreme heavenly demon body. Other than Chunong, who was a reincarnated monster from a different world, no one else had such attainments. In order for Hanba to shed his demonic body, he had to cause a drought in the mortal world for 3 years and cause the death of countless living beings. Only then would he have the chance to transform if he was not slain by the cultivators of the right path. Chun-Ong had calculated Gu Haozi's background. He was a rogue celestial who achieved Dao during the Qin dynasty. He died from a calamity in the Eastern Han dynasty. His resentment was not extinguished and he turned into Hanba. He appeared during the Western Jin dynasty and caused a drought in the mortal world for 3 years, causing the death of countless living beings. At that time, he actually cultivated into a half-demon body. He was the most powerful demon at that time. Later on, he was suppressed by a mighty person and was used to fill up the eye of the sea. For someone like him to appear and cause harm to the mortal world for 3 years, a Hanba that matched the heavens had not been seen in the Central Plains for hundreds of years. It was really rare that he was not eliminated by the cultivators. If it was not because of the chaos of the 5 barbarians that caused a great disaster in the mortal world, he would not have been able to achieve this by chance. There was only one Hanba with such potential since ancient times. It would be difficult for him to appear again in the future. He could be considered as the only one. Chun-Ong was doing research and experiment. He loved this kind of precious specimen the most. Therefore, Chun-Ong would not allow it to fail. If he could take this opportunity to plot against the person who was suspected to have clues about the main deity, it would be even better. The embryo of the divine pearl of Een was most suitable to be an inner core of a demon that swallowed and spat out the moon. It was best to use the pearl of the flood dragon, the pearl of the centipede, the pearl of the flowing jade of the moonlight, and the giant clam at the bottom of the sea to refine a mother pearl of the dark embryo. Then, it would be refined with the true water of Een to remove the essence of the pearl, leaving only a little essence of Tyene. Only then would it be considered as successfully cultivated. Chun-Ong swallowed and spat out the essence of the moon at night. He crossed the night sky with the Milky Way and refined the true water of Een. During the day, he searched the 4 seas and made divinations to find a suitable pearl fetus. After a few months, he finally converted a 1,000-year-old mussel into reincarnation and gave it a lot of benefit. In accordance with heaven's will, he kept a 1,000-year-old Xian bead in his pocket without taking any karma. Then, he returned to the top of the Black Sand Sea Dragon. He refined the fire during the day and the pearl at night with his disciple. After 36 days, he finally refined a pearl and cultivated the true Samadhi fire to a small success. On this day, Chun-Ong was refining the manna of the Milky Way. He used the essence of the sun and moon to merge with the water vapor of the ocean. Suddenly, he sensed something and knew that the prohibition he set in the eye of the South Sea was touched. He kept the silk and the treasured weapons and steered the golden ship towards the eye of the sea. Above the sea's eye, 9 huge tornadoes trapped a person in the center. Infinite Gue water true thunder was triggered, covering the sky and covering the earth, causing the person to suffer unspeakable pain. He could only hide behind a 5-colored miasma. Looking at the miasma trembling, the treasured light of the magic treasure faintly dissipating, it was obvious that he could not hold on any longer. However, the waves on the surface of the sea rolled and endless water vapor rolled over. The true thunder of Een water was born and extinguished. A divine thunder exploded and countless seawater soared into the sky. It was then condensed into more true thunder of Een water by the giant water tornadoes. How could the power of one person compare with the power of heaven and earth? The person's mana could not be replenished and soon fell into a hopeless situation. When he saw Chun-Ang's traveling light, he quickly shouted at him, Fellow Taoist, please wait. Fellow Taoist, please wait. I accidentally triggered the restriction here. Fellow Taoist, please lend me a hand and help me escape from the restriction. Chen Ong shouted in midair. I'm the one who set up this restrictive spell, to trap a fiend who is slaughtering living beings and extracting the blood essence of the 3-star beauty swan and I to cultivate an evil technique. This place is remote. If no one attacks the 3-star beauty transformed by my treasured weapon, the prohibition will not be activated. Hurry up and explain. Otherwise, when I combine the mother wind with the true thunder of Een water, the power of wind and thunder will be 10 times more terrifying. By then, you will only be left with a strand of soul to reincarnate. Don't blame me for not giving you a chance. Chapter 487. Although you are wearing a kind-looking shell, do you think I can't recognize the bloody light floating under your skin? It was just a random guess, but I didn't expect to guess your background. It is indeed the evil method of the Blood God Sutra. Besides, the original Blood God Sutra only has the method of robbing blood essence and soul. It will never rob the consciousness and mana of a cultivator. Chen Ong felt that he might have found the traces of the interference of the main god. The bloody light that appeared on this person was like the son of Blood God. Obviously, the original owner of this skin had been swallowed by him, and even his consciousness had been robbed. His mana and memory were the same as before. Even if the person was close to him, they wouldn't be able to see it. Chen Ong also saw that his physical body was floating and vaguely formed by the bloody light. It was different from the normal form, so he realized the truth. This person's physical body was closer to the state of the infant of the mystic door, but there was an extra evil chi in his bones and a trace of bloody light floating in his primordial spirit. This was the original body of the son of Blood God. Thinking of this, Chen Ong waved his right hand, and the mist on the sea turned into the one sky water banner and returned to his hand. He then shook the long water-colored banner in his hand, and endless water threads fell down. With just one strike, the number of Gui water divine thunders in the Mother Wind's chi essence was increased by 10 times. They exploded together, and the sound of thunder rumbled, tearing the miasma that protected the person into pieces. Seeing how fierce Chen Ong was, the person was scared out of his wit. He could only release a clear glass mirror, and a ball of mirror light the size of an acre protected his body. He kept begging to Chen Ong, looking very pitiful. Chen Ong just sneered and waved the banner again, wanting to kill him here and now. Tan Yun shouted from behind, "Fellow Taoist, please have mercy. I'm afraid there must be some misunderstanding." Chen Ong paused for a moment, stopped the spell, and waited for her to come up. At first, Tan Yun was still 100 miles away, but in an instant she landed on the cloud near Chen Ong. Her speed was 100 times faster than before. It was obvious that she had mastered the Ice Soul Divine Light escape. With an anxious look on her face, she came to the middle of the formation, disregarding her fight with Chen Ong. She first carefully looked at the appearance of the person trapped in the restrictive spell before hesitantly asking, "Is that Reverend Mo of Yellow Rock Island? I went to visit her a few days ago." Chen Ong already knew that the person below was a devil. The shell on his body had been used by the devil to harm others. That immortal Mo of Yellow Rock Island had probably been harmed by him long ago. However, this person had used the blood god's son to harm others, and the soul and memory of the victim were all there. If he imitated it, no one would be able to recognize him. Therefore, Chen Ong just let him pretend. Sure enough, when Reverend Mo saw the Gui water restrictive spell stop, he smiled bitterly and said, "Fairy Tan, please don't joke. The last time you and I met was 5 years ago. What do you mean by recently?" Tan Yun heaved a sigh of relief and said to Chen Ong, "Chen Daoyu, I know the person below. He's an individual cultivator from Yellow Rock Island 500 miles away. His background is clear, and he's not a devil cultivator. Reverend Mo is skilled in earth and wood spells and has lived on Yellow Rock Island for hundreds of years. Before I came here, I had dealings with him. He's not with the previous person, so please let him out. Chen Ong already knew what to do, but he pretended to think for a moment and shouted, "You said you're Reverend Mo of Yellow Rock Island? But I don't know how many individual cultivators can last for 3/4 of an hour under my Gui water true thunder restriction. Besides, that miasma cloud was from Miaojiang." He turned around and asked Tan Yun, "Does Reverend Mo have these 2 magic treasures?" He used his magic power to draw a bit of the broken cloud and pointed at the mirror in Reverend Mo's hand. Tan Yun frowned and observed for a moment before shaking her head and saying, "Reverend Mo's powerful magic treasures are the 6 earth and wood crystal sand. I've never heard of him having these 2 magic treasures." Having said that, she couldn't help but feel a trace of doubt and looked at Reverend Mo to hear his explanation. With a bitter face, Reverend Mo said, "The 5-cloud miasma is my trump card. I usually keep it a secret and only use it to protect myself when the great calamity comes." After saying that, he revealed an extremely vivid expression of heartache and looked at Chen Ong with an expression of being angry but not daring to say anything. He continued, "As for this submerged sea-glazed mirror, it's a treasure I obtained a few days ago from an overseas individual cultivator. He left a message saying that his remains are here, so I came to look for him. I didn't expect to disturb fellow Taoists' restrictive spell." Reverend Mo's performance completely convinced Tan Yun. She persuaded in a low voice, "Now that Chen Daoyu has no more doubts, can you let Reverend Mo out?" Chen Ong didn't answer. He just flew forward for a distance, getting closer and closer to the edge of the restrictive spell. Reverend Mo stared at Chen Ong anxiously. Seeing that he didn't respond, he sighed and said, "Fine. I think you're still worried about me. How about this? I'll let you guard the magic treasures. Even if you let me out, I won't be able to fight back. Is that okay?" Only then did Chen Ong nod and say, "Fine, give me the magic treasures. I'll use this streamer to trap you first so that you won't launch an attack from afar." He waved the Tiani Life water streamer in his hand, turning it into a magical cloud and entering the restrictive spell. Old Taoist Mo sighed and looked extremely reluctant. He put his submerged sea-glazed mirror, 6 grains of earthwood crystal sand, an unorthodox flying sword, and a blood-red amber-like object on the magical cloud, wrapped them up and sent them to Chen Ong. Chen Ong glanced at them and sneered. Ordinary cultivators couldn't see them, but when he scanned them with his primordial spirit, he found that these objects all had a trace of blood-red light, especially that blood-red amber, which was obviously transformed from a son of blood god. If he didn't pay attention and found a flaw, the son of blood god would turn back to his original form, pounce on him, suck his blood essence, and take away his primordial spirit. As for the other magic treasures, as long as Chen Ong picked them up and used his magic power to probe them, the son of blood god's magic power would be lifeless and seep into Chen Ang's magic power, dissolving all of his magic power. At that time, his life and death would be in his hands, and refining him into a son of blood god would be a piece of cake. This kind of magic power was the most hidden. Even if ordinary cultivators noticed it, they would only suspect that it was caused by internal or external demons. They would never think that it was a demonic parasite like the son of blood god. However, Chen Ang's celestial river magic power was the foundation created by the sect master of the other realm. It was supplemented by Chen Ang's real body and verified by his incarnation in this life. It was already one of the best magic powers in the 3 realms. Whether it was the Tiani true water that could contain all things, the Xianming true water that could freeze the ages, or the first essence heavy water that was integrated into one, they were all extremely pure power that could not tolerate impurities like the magic power of the son of blood god. Even if it was invaded by the son of blood god, this kind of magic power would be incompatible and would be purified by him slightly. Chapter 488. When Chen Ong picked up the 2 items, he felt two extremely tiny strands of strange magic power sneaking into his body. The two strands of magic power didn't look strange on the surface. They were like warm blood qi that wanted to melt into Chen Ang's flesh and blood. However, Chen Ang's spirit, qi, and spirit were refined as one. Therefore, the two strands of strange magic power were very conspicuous and were easily caught by him. With Chen Ang's ability, he could naturally sense the deep hatred and stubbornness hidden in the blood qi. It was just a strand of magic power, but it gave Chen Ang a feeling of cunning and wisdom. It was even trying to pry into Chen Ang's consciousness. Immediately, he concluded that the magic power of the Blood God's son was not the original version passed down by the Blood God Elder. It was like the legendary 129,600 Blood God's sons in the Blood Sea. After swallowing a cultivator, they could create a Blood God's son with the same memory and supernatural power. The poison was endless and hidden deep. It could easily destroy a person's spirit and body. Chen Ang was worried that the person would find out something was wrong, so he used his magic power to imitate a greedy and stupid consciousness and transmitted it through the Blood God's magic power. Chen Ang glanced over and saw a trace of sneer flashing across Jinren Mo's eyes. He immediately understood what was going on. Suddenly, he absorbed a strand of the Blood God's son's qi and used his extremely high magic power to suddenly cast a curse to freeze the person's primordial spirit. The Tiani water streamer in his hand covered down. How could Jinren Mo, whose primordial spirit was frozen, have time to react? He was simply frozen and sealed in the streamer. Chen Ang's unexpected move caught the female cultivator, Tan Yun, unprepared. She was terrified and thought, what is Chen Daoyou's reaction? Could it be that he was moved by the magic treasures and wanted to steal the treasures and kill people? Although the azure glass mirror and the earthwood crystal sand are good, they are just unorthodox magic treasures. Is the magic treasures in Chen Daoyou's hands far better? Why? He wants to steal the treasures and kill people? Could it be that I misjudged him? Then why did he teach me to purify my foundation and recultivate my magic power? Or is he plotting something bigger? Chen Ang didn't know what was going through her mind, so he just smiled and said, "Fellow Taoist, don't worry. I've already guessed that this person should be the enemy we're looking for. Even if it's not, it's most likely related to him." Tan Yun said doubtfully, "Although fellow Taoist Mo and I aren't old acquaintances, we can't be." Chen Ang raised his hand to interrupt her. Pointing at the one sky water banner, he said, "Look again, is he still Dao friend Mo?" Tan Yun turned her head and looked over. Inside the streamer, Reverend Mo's body was slightly distorted. His color faded, and his whole body became blood-red, as if he was made of blood. Gradually, the color faded, leaving only a smear of blood. Dao friend Mo's face appeared on the blood shadow, sinister and terrifying. "This is..." Tan Yun was at a loss for words. She pointed at the bloody shadow in the banner. "This is a blood god." Chen Ang sighed. "I'm afraid fellow Taoist Mo is in trouble." Chen Ang stretched out his hand and peeled off the bloody shadow that wrapped around Reverend Mo. There were still a dozen or so identical bloody shadows hidden inside. They were only the size of a wicker basket. Chen Ang peeled them off one by one and let Tan Yun identify them. They were cultivators from overseas and wandering cultivators nearby. There was no lack of people from Middle-earth among them. So many wandering cultivators from overseas had been refined into blood gods. It was truly insane. "I'm afraid this person isn't from overseas, but someone from Middle-earth." Chen Ang calculated the origins of the people who were the first to be refined into blood gods. As expected, they were cultivators from Middle-earth. Tan Yun was already extremely furious. Even though she had always been kind, she couldn't help but scold. Who did this? How could they be so insane? Chen Ang thought, "I'm already 80% sure that this is the work of the main god. The Blood God Sutra originated from this land, so it's natural for it to be circulated." It's also reasonable for someone to innovate and create a new world during the circulation. Based on my deduction, the origin of this sutra should be faintly related to Deng Yin. If I didn't know that the Blood God Sutra had an extraterrestrial version, I probably wouldn't have suspected that it was the work of the extraterrestrial demons. This must be the main god's misgivings. He's afraid of being easily spied on. It's similar to how I pinned the origin of the celestial river's mana on cult master Chun from the other world. If you say there's no relationship between them, I'll be the first to not believe it. His hands didn't stop there. He grabbed the real body of the blood god hidden in one of the bloody shadows. His primordial spirit was controlled by Chen Ong, so he was unaware and couldn't feel anything in the outside world. Time passed, and he seemed to be dead. Looking at his appearance, he was a young man. His original body had probably been refined into a bloody light. If he continued to make deductions, he could only vaguely deduce that it was an old demon in West Kunlun. That person's mana was profound, and his primordial spirit was sharp enough to see through heaven's secrets. Chen Ong was afraid of rashly alerting the enemy, so he didn't delve deeper. He probed the celestial river's mana into his body. That layer of bloody light looked weak, but it was actually extremely tough. Chen Ong wasn't afraid of easily destroying his soul. He integrated the celestial river's mana into the blood god's mana and sensed the subtleties of his mana from afar. Although it was only for a short time, Chen Ong saw many mysteries. He also discovered a wisp of mana that came from the same source as the Blood God Sutra. However, it was even more vicious and hidden. After studying it carefully, he realized that this person had long been secretly controlled by someone. Although he seemed to be free, his consciousness was actually controlled by someone else. He had already been refined into the Blood God's Sutra and only retained a bit of autonomy. However, if that person were to make things difficult for him, he would probably be at the mercy of others. His thoughts would all be controlled by others. Thinking about it further, it was extremely terrifying. Chen Ong thought to himself, fortunately, I made the first move and fixed this person's consciousness, so the Blood God's Sutra in his body didn't spread any information. However, I have to deal with it quickly. Otherwise, if this person's consciousness is immersed for a long time, the person controlling him might also find out that something is wrong. He immediately summoned the Golden Ship of Fortune and suppressed the Blood God's Sutra. With the power of the Golden Ship of Fortune's restriction, no matter how vicious the Blood God's Sutra was, they wouldn't be able to cause any trouble. After informing Tan Yun, he silently used his primordial spirit to deduce the various mysteries of the Blood God's Sutra. He didn't know the tricks of the Blood God Sutra's other techniques, but the Blood God's Sutra relied on the nameless resentment in the soul to refine the body with magic. It refined the original body into a bloody light that relied on magic. It was best at robbing people's blood chi and soul. There was no difference in the first step. They would first peel off their own skin, stab their body with magic, and then refine it with magic. They would suffer for at least 9 years. When the whole body was refined and turned into a bloody shadow, it would be successful. This was also the scheme of the God of Fortune to hide this sutra. However, the Blood God's Sutra's skin wasn't engraved with the great Azura demon, but the 49 River Styx Blood Sea True talismans. This time, Chen Ong wanted to deduce the true meaning of these 49 true talismans. Even though he didn't know the mysteries of the other vicious techniques, he knew the fundamentals. Whether it was learning about them in the future, or restraining them, he would be confident in plotting against the Blood God's Sutra master. Moreover, this Blood God Sutra's restriction on the Blood God's Sutra was more profound than the Demon Sutra's sutra of suppressing gods and demons that Chen Ong had learned before. It could be used to refine Gu Hao's drought demon body into the supreme demon body of the great Azura. Chapter 489. With the Blood God's illusions in hand, the The 49 river Styx blood sea true talismans in the foundation of the Blood God Sutra could not escape Chen Ang's calculation. In less than half a day, he had gathered 36 true talismans. At this time, the river Styx blood sea true talismans were clear. From Chen Ang's observation, it was worthy of being the true inheritance of the Blood Sea. It could break the void, communicate with the Blood Sea true water of the underworld, and cultivate this kind of filthy and evil Dharma power. Although the Blood Sea true water was not one of the 7 great Khanate true water, it was still very magical. It was the filthiest true water in the universe. After Chen Ong obtained all 49 true talismans, he could refine the Blood God's illusion's Dharma power into Blood Sea true water. He immediately captured the dozens of Blood God's illusions, except for the murderer's true self. Chen Ong waved his hand and shot out 49 true talismans, which turned into a miniature blood river. It covered his head and extracted the blood light from the blood shadows of the Blood God's illusions one by one. These blood lights were all filthy Dharma power and souls. Except for a bit of true spirit, all of them were transformed into Blood God's Dharma power. The Blood God's Dharma power circulated in the blood river formed by Chen Ang's Dharma power, then it was refined into a drop of Blood Sea true water, which fell into Chen Ang's hand. Taoist Master Mo's hundreds of years of Dharma power, as well as the Blood Sea true water formed by his body and most of his soul, were only 3 drops. Among the cultivators killed by the murderer, Taoist Master Mo's cultivation was not the highest, but he was in the top 3. Otherwise, he would not have been chosen by the murderer as a disguise. Chen Ong refined all the dozens of Blood God's illusions, but he only obtained about 20 drops of Blood Sea true water. The Blood Sea true water merged into the heavenly river Dharma power and formed a small blood river. It connected to an unknown space in the void and absorbed traces of blood chi to strengthen itself. The space connected to the river of blood must be the source of all the demonic Tao, the holy land of the great Azura, the boundless Blood Sea. Chen Ong allowed the Blood Sea true water to grow bit by bit. He silently used his primordial spirit to turn this magical power into a part of himself and slowly comprehended it. His primordial spirit connected to the mysterious Blood Sea dimension through the blood river and absorbed the true water within. After a few hours, he suddenly comprehended some principles and transformed the blood river, absorbing a large amount of mixed true water that was the color of blood and turquoise from the void. The blood-like true water suddenly condensed into a turquoise color and expanded into a miniature Milky Way formed by over 100 drops of turquoise true water, drilling into Chen Ang's dantian. The Milky Way formed by the turquoise true water flowed into the heavenly river Dharma power in the dantian without any obstruction. It blended with the other 3 types of true water and opened up another source of magical power. It was one of the 7 types of innate true water, the blue sky underworld. Among the 7 types of innate true water that Chen Ong cultivated, the blue sky underworld was the most mysterious one. The other 6 types of true water could still be found in the human world, but the blue sky underworld's root was in the manor of the dead, the land of reincarnation, and it was hard to find in the human world. Chen Ong originally thought that the true water would be the hardest to cultivate among the 7 types of true water. Unexpectedly, when Chen Ang's primordial spirit was comprehending the Blood Sea River Styx, he suddenly understood the principle of the Blood Sea River Styx being one. That was when he realized that the true water of the blue sky underworld was different from the other 6 types of innate true water. It was divided into 2 different states, yin and yang, clear and turbid. The Blood Sea referred to the filthy Blood Sea true water in the boundless Blood Sea, while the river Styx referred to the blue sky underworld. Therefore, the Blood Sea River Styx was also known as the blue sky underworld. The Blood Sea true water could also transform into one of the 7 types of Khanate true water, the blue sky river of underworld. With the help of the Blood God, this true water Dharma power that was the most difficult to cultivate was successfully cultivated. The spiral-like blue sky river in Chen Ang's Dantian spun and transformed into a blood-red sky river. The sky river's Dharma power transformed into the blood sea true water. The Dharma power wrapped around his primordial spirit and rushed toward the top of his head. Chen Ang's body shook, and a blood-red light emerged from the top of his head. His primordial spirit was like a blood shadow, turning into an existence like the blood god. The changes within were truly astonishing. However, the other three types of true water in Chen Ang's body were still there. Soon, he opened his eyes and looked at the blood sea primordial spirit opposite him, which was like a blood shadow, the blood god. He was quite surprised. The blue sky underworld, or the blood sea true water, was the most nourishing of the 7 types of true water. It could even be used to attach to the primordial spirit. Just like the dark female pearl of the green-robed patriarch and the snow soul pearl of the goddess of calamity Jing, they were all treasures that could be cultivated into a second primordial spirit. The blood sea sky river contained a quarter of Chen Ang's Dharma power. It was born as Chen Ang's second primordial spirit, and it could transform between the 2 types of true water at any time. The second primordial spirit formed by the blood sea true water was the blood god. The 49 blood sea true talismans also turned into river Styx true talismans and entered Chen Ang's primordial spirit, becoming the foundation of the second primordial spirit. Chen Ang's second primordial spirit smiled. With a point of its finger, it completely extracted the true spirits of the unlucky cultivators who were cultivated into the blood god. The rest of the souls that were contaminated by the blood god were sucked into its mouth, becoming nourishment for this primordial spirit incarnation, leaving only a little bit of true spirit. Looking at the muddle-headed appearance of the 10 cultivators, Chen Ong knew that if he allowed them to reincarnate like this, even if they were lucky enough to become adults again, they would inevitably become muddle-headed. They would need to reincarnate at least 6 times before they could complete their souls. He couldn't help but sympathize with them. He turned the blood river Dharma power again, turning it into the blue sky river of underworld. He threw the true spirits of the cultivators into it and reincarnated 6 times. When they came out from the blue sky river, the true spirits finally repaired their souls and gave a deep bow to Chen Ong with gratitude. Chen Ong also consumed a lot of energy. He used up 3 drops of the blue sky river of underworld. He still bowed to them and said, "Fellow Taoists, it's really a pity that you were met with misfortune. However, I've already repaired your souls. Although your spiritual light was inevitably extinguished, your souls are still intact. If you're lucky in the future, you can still enter the Great Tao. The scoundrel who committed such an evil deed will also have his retribution. Everyone, it's getting late. Your souls are weak, so you shouldn't stay in the world of the living for long. Allow me to send you into reincarnation again." With a wave of his sleeve, the blue sky river rotated and sucked the 10 souls into it, throwing them into the place of reincarnation in the unseen world. After these blood gods' sons entered reincarnation again, only the culprit was left. If Chen Ong hadn't understood the principle of the blood sea and river Styx being one, he would have needed to slowly deal with him and carefully remove his consciousness. However, his blood sea true water Dharma power was more profound than the blood god sutra. Compared to the blood sea primordial spirit, the ability of the blood god's son was like a big magician meeting a small magician. Chapter 490. While reading the memory of the murderer, Chen Ong used the blood sea real water to sense the mastermind on the other side through the secret hand in the murderer's body. Because he was afraid of concealment, he could only disguise the demonic thought as a little distracting thought and slightly pry into some superficial things. Now there was only a blank space, without any useful information. Chen Ong turned the evil thought into a fire and secretly eroded the murderer's true self. The master was the eldest disciple of the West Kunlun Old Devil Xianyuan the Great, the 5 obscenities supreme, and the disciple was nicknamed the Little Silver Bug Qin Gang. A few years ago, Xianyuan the Great obtained a scroll of devil scripture from somewhere. As the eldest disciple, the 5 obscenities supreme was taught by the devil scripture. He skinned himself and refined him into a blood god. Even his 9 disciples were killed by him. The little silver bug Qin Gang was the 2nd disciple of the 5 obscenities supreme. He saw his master sucking the blood of those disciples who refused to follow him and refining them into blood god. He made up his mind and suffered many devil trials. He became the first disciple under the 5 obscenities supreme to refine a blood god. He was entrusted with the great task of coming to the South Sea to rescue an old senior of the devil cult. Of course, the 5 obscenities supreme was not being kind. He wanted to take advantage of the fact that Gu Haozi's vitality had not recovered to offer him to his master, Xianyuan the Great, as a tonic. Needless to say, if it weren't for Chen Ang's interference, there was an 80% chance that he would be able to accomplish this. But now, not only did he give Chen Ang the chance, even the trace of blood god that he used to monitor his disciple had become a way for Chen Ang to control him. Chen Ang could faintly feel that the 5 obscenities supreme was in the South Sea. He was afraid that he did not trust his disciple, so he followed behind secretly and could grasp the progress at any time. But the most important thing now was to refine Gu Haozi into a great Azura Supreme Demon. As long as Gu Haozi was under Chen Ang's control, the 5 obscenities supreme would not be able to escape from Chen Ang's hands. The female cultivator Tan Yun thought that Chen Ang was interrogating the murderer, so she did not disturb him for the past few days. It was not until Chen Ang had stayed in the golden ship for a long time that she could not help but ask him to go with her to see Gu Haozi and report the matter. Chen Ang saw the greenish-black color on her forehead and knew that this was not of her own will. Most likely, Gu Haozi had spied her secretly and tricked her to test Ang Chen Ang. This was why Chen Ang had kept Gu Haozi. Of course, he would not alert the enemy. He pretended that nothing had happened and said to Tan Yun, "That person's spells were very powerful. I could not ask with him. Chen with Ang with. I only Gu Haozi's god." He did not want to with him. Chen on spell, god on Gu with his background, he said and said. With him. He with, and said. Tan Yun's expression suddenly changed. Then what should we do? Chen Ang pondered for a moment and said, "There are 3 ways to deal with this. The best way is to ask for help. Amei is the leader of the right path and is the most helpful. I know that the 3 elders of Amei live in the East Sea fishing for Aog. If we go and ask for help, I'm afraid that they will not lack the treasures of true fire and the essence of pure yang. Even if we cannot gather them in a short time, we do not need to be afraid of the person behind that person." Tan Yun was about to show a happy expression, but suddenly the black gas on her forehead pressed down. She frowned and said, "But the journey to the East Sea is far. Now that that person has been captured by you, I'm afraid that person behind us will be alerted today. How will we have the time? Please tell us the next 2 ways." Chen Ang knew that Gu Haozi would not choose this method. Gu Haozi was not a real wandering celestial from overseas. If Amei knew about this, who would they kill to kill the demon? This method was only used to numb Gu Haozi. Now that it was disrupted by him, Gu Haozi might have already noticed the venerable of 5 aphrodisiacs plan. It was when he was at a dead end that the trap behind him would be fruitful. Just as I said before, let fellow Taoist Gu Haozi switch to cultivating the Great Yin form refining technique and refine his slew into the Great Yin true form. Even without true fire, yang, and supreme treasures, he would still be able to break the restrictions. The female cultivator Tan Yun sighed helplessly and said, "If there is really no other way, then this is the only way. Let me talk to Senior Gu Haozi then. The worst way is to take a risk. I have already cultivated the Samadhi true fire to the primary level. If I am careful, I can already melt the 10,000-year-old cold flower. At that time, I will first move the body of Gu Hao Zi's primordial spirit and find the treasure to dispel the cold. Chen Ong said the third way. As expected, Tan Yun rejected it immediately and said, I'm afraid this is too risky. Chen Ong didn't mind. His other two plans were meant to force Gu Haozi to choose the middle option. It seemed feasible, but for Gu Haozi, who was hiding his identity, it was absolutely impossible for him to choose. It was only use to numb him. After the two of them came to a decision, they dived into the eye of the sea together and came to the cold spring glacier again. Tan Yun reported the situation to Gu Haozi. Gu Haozi had already planted a secret spell on Tan Yun. He only pretended to listen for a while and saw the figure in the glacier cupping his hands and saying, Thank you for your help, fellow Taoist Chen, please help me. Chen Ong smiled faintly and said, That's easy. It's just that the Tang form refining technique is very time-consuming. I'm afraid you won't have time to cultivate it, and that person will come to you. His magic power is 100 times stronger than the disciple I caught. I'm also not his match. I'm afraid this place can't be hidden from him. If you are at a critical moment and he comes to disturb you, it will be very dangerous. Gu Haozi sighed and said, This is fate. If that's the case, there's still a possibility of passing the tribulation. If I don't do anything, I'm afraid I'll have to face the tribulation. Chen Ong pondered for a moment and said, If that's the case, I can't just stand by and watch. The Tang form refining technique still needs the Tang star to store the primordial spirit. I know you want to borrow the power of the magic treasure to draw the power of the Tang star down. Not to mention that it will take a long time, it will also cause a huge commotion. I have a pearl made of Tang true water here. I can give it to fellow Taoist to cultivate. After he said that, he took out the Tang God Pearl. As expected, it was rippling with the power of Tang true water. It was just an embryonic form and not completely cultivated. There wasn't even a restriction. This made Gu Haozi feel more at ease. He saw that it was indeed Tang true water, and the pearl was just an embryo of 1,000 years old profound pearl. It didn't even have a restriction or talisman, so what kind of trap could it have? Moreover, this Tang true water was the purest. It couldn't hide any insidious restriction. How would he know that there was an anomaly like Chen Ong? So he accepted it with ease. The embryo of the profound pearl could not enter the glacier, so it was held in midair by Gu Haozi. With Chen Ong and Tan Yun protecting him, the huge Tang God Pearl suddenly released strands of Tang true water. Like silver moonlight, it seeped into the glacier and shone on Gu Haozi's remains. It turned into a silver cloud and entered his 7 orifices. The greenish-black corpse gas on Gu Haozi's face suddenly faded a little. After he swallowed that bit of Tang true water, it suddenly merged with the nature of Hanba and dissolved that bit of corpse gas fire poison. It cleared Gu Haozi's primordial spirit and the Xian ice prohibition on his body loosened. He said in surprise, Fellow Taoist technique is really useful. Chapter 491. Chen Ong laughed and said, It's good that I can help you. However, there isn't much Tang true water left in the Tang pearl. I'm afraid it won't be enough for you. Let me guide the moonlight from the sea. It'll be better if we use both at the same time. Tianjing 2. His diligence not only made Tan Yun look at him, but also changed Gu Haozi's opinion of him. He thought, this kid is so warm-hearted. Even though he's a little arrogant, he's not without merit. Even though he doesn't respect me, he's very proactive in helping me escape. He must be someone with a cold face but a warm heart. Even though I still have to kill him after I escape, I might as well give him some essence blood to turn him into a zombie and take him as my disciple. Chen Ong took out the submerged glass mirror that he got from Taoist Mo and shone it on the sea. A ray of moonlight shone down. His second primordial spirit secretly came out of his body and turned into the blue sky underworld. A bit of green water blended into the moonlight and shone on Gu Haozi's remains. The mana from the blue sky underworld seeped into Gu Haozi's body and was refined by him according to the Tian form refining technique. The nature of the water remained the same and was best at nourishing the spirit. Gu Haozi instinctively longed for it. If it wasn't for Chen Ang's primordial spirit hiding in it, it would have been really beneficial. He only felt that the mana was nourishing his body and thought it was the Tian form refining technique. Even though he was secretly wary of the Tian pearl, it was only a cultivator's instinct. He never suspected that there was anything wrong with the moonlight that Chen Ong guided. The Tian true water and blue sky underworld were the world's most precious treasures. Who else could take them out except for Chen Ong? They were also the two types of true water that could help the Tian form refining technique the most. In addition, Gu Haozi had accumulated a lot. Even though the essence of the 1,000-year-old jellyfish eroded his body, it inadvertently helped him understand the principles of using water to fight fire and suppressing demons with mysterious ice. Under the suppression of the cold spring, the demonic fire no longer eroded his primordial spirit. This was originally an arrangement made by the mighty being who had sealed him to persuade him to turn over a new leaf, but it also allowed him to comprehend many wondrous techniques of the demonic path. Now that he was using the true form of Yin to temper his demonic body, the great Azura Supreme demonic body had truly taken half a step forward, and he had already reached a realm that no one had ever achieved before. Chen Ang's second nascent divinity lurked within his body. Whatever Gu Haozi's nascent divinity comprehended and thought, he transmitted all of it to Chen Ong, allowing him to understand. Even Gu Haozi's cherishing talent was detected by him, which made Chen Ong smile. However, this was the transformation of the one and only great Azura Supreme Fiend God in this world. This was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, and it was clearly displayed in front of Chen Ong. Even if Chen Ong was an anomaly, it was still a great harvest. If other devil cultivators saw this, it would be the supreme devil scripture of this world, enough to make the old devils of West Kunlun break their head. The demon body was just lacking a bit of primordial spirit that hadn't melted yet. As long as this bit of pure yang was melted, it would become the supreme fiend god and give birth to the first heavenly devil in this world. Gu Haozi's primordial spirit transformed into a trail of devil fire and escaped from the glacier. It entered the Tai Yin divine pearl and slowly guided the moonlight, tempering that bit of pure yang in his primordial spirit. When the pure yang turned into Tai Yin, it could enter into the demon body and trigger the transformation of the supreme fiend god. Now that the general trend had been set, Chen Ong didn't bother to hide his support anymore. With a gentle wave of his hand, the Nine Bends Yellow River formation was activated with a loud bang. The formation drew the power of heaven and earth, projecting a few thousand miles of moonlight here. It could be seen from the surface of the sea within 10,000 miles. A bright moon grew bigger and bigger, occupying half the sky. However, there was a gap that was slowly eroding the Tai Yin. Heavenly Dog engulfs the moon. At this moment, Gu Haozi already felt that something was wrong. He roused his spirits and shouted, "Chen Daoyu, why are you doing this?" Chen Ong smiled faintly. "Fellow Taoist Han Ba, your master Chen is refining your consciousness. Fellow Taoist, please sacrifice yourself to prove your Tao and achieve the supreme fiend god body of great Azura. You can be my arm and become my incarnation." The female cultivator Tan Yun at the side was dumbfounded. She asked with a trembling voice, "Chen Daoyu, Senior Gu Haozi, you too?" She no longer had any value to him, so why would Gu Haozi still keep her? With a thought, he triggered the hidden hand in her body. Tan Yun suddenly screamed and her eyes turned red. She wanted to pounce towards Chen Ong. Chen Ong had already made up his mind. He stretched out his hand and flicked his finger. The Samadhi devil refining true fire circled around her body, refining away the hidden hand in her body and allowing her to regain consciousness. "Chen Daoyu, who exactly is this Gu Haozi?" Tan Yun still had no idea that she was being plotted against. She asked Chen Ong in shock, "What exactly happened?" Chen Ong said slowly, "Fellow Daoist Tan, that Gu Haozi is not a senior cultivator. He is a sealed drought demon. He wants to trick us to save him. Allow me to refine this evil creature first, then I will explain to fellow Daoist." As he finished, he scattered his crown and performed the heavenly dipper steps, performing the heavenly demon dance. In terms of the devil path, Chen Eng's research was even deeper than Gu Haozi's. Now that he was using the devil to counter the devil, how could he resist? Seeing that his primordial spirit was sinking again, Chen Ong used the lunar pearl to keep his real spirit. He carved the blood sea true water onto the 49 river Styx true talisman and refined it with the Samadhi devil refining true fire. Internally, his primordial spirit was cultivating the lunar shape refining technique. Externally, Chen Ong used the Blood God Sutra and the supreme magic sacrificial refinement of the devil path. Gu Haozi could only curse endlessly, "What a ruthless thief! How dare you, the righteous path of the mystic door? No, this is the spell of the devil path. Such a profound spell of the devil path. Who exactly are you?" He cursed for 3/4 of an hour. Seeing that his last shred of self was about to sink, he knew Chen Eng's method. He understood that after he sank, his real spirit might not be able to escape. He turned around and begged, "Chen Daoyu, please let my real spirit reincarnate. I, Gu Haozi, will never forget your great kindness." Chen Ong sighed and said, "It's not that I want to torture you. It's just that the supreme demon body of Great Azura that I need you as a material. I don't need your soul to dissipate and your spirit to be destroyed. I only need to refine you into a talisman consciousness, an artificial intelligence-like consciousness, so that the power of this supreme technique of the devil path won't be affected. Please grant me my wish, fellow Daoist." This time, Gu Haozi didn't even have the strength to curse. He just cried and his primordial spirit turned into a bit of real spirit and merged into the lunar pearl. He refined the lunar blood demon and threw it into the transforming demon body. Like water falling into a pot of oil, the demon body suddenly changed. With the second primordial spirit presiding inside and Chen Eng's real body responding from the outside, the supreme demon body's transformation went smoothly. Not long after, the remains of Gu Haozi's drought demon body grew many black scales. A wave of demon fire burned through the restriction, allowing this extremely ugly and tall Great Azura body that was wrapped in demon fire to break free from the glacier. The wondrous appearance of heavenly flowers and the sea of blood gushed out from the ground. Chen Eng's second primordial spirit that sat in the demon body opened its mouth and sucked in the endless sea of blood in the void. In an instant, the world of Shu Mountain was as red as blood. The hearts of the surrounding experts were shaken. West Kunlun, East Sea. People everywhere in the great eastern wilderness and the divine central continent exclaimed in shock, "A heavenly demon has actually appeared. Has the devil path flourished?" Chen Ong didn't have time to care about the impact of his actions. He focused on analyzing and promoting the changes of this supreme demon body. The scaly body of the great Azura demon king twisted and turned into Chen Eng's appearance, standing side by side with his real body. The wondrous fragrance of heavenly flowers in the air gradually faded. The sea of blood on the ground had long been sucked clean by the blood-colored light wheel behind the demon body. Chen Eng's blood sea primordial spirit had reached great success among the 7 types of true waters, becoming a heavenly demon. Now, other than the supreme demon body of the Great Azura, there was also the primordial spirit of the river Styx blood demon hidden within. Even if the two were separated, they were still devils of the heavenly demon level. They were both complete versions of Chen Ong. The river Styx blood demon Ji said, "Today, I am Forefather River Styx." The supreme heavenly demon body opened its mouth and used the heavenly demon true voice. "I am enlightened Apocalypse. Chun-Ang's primordial spirit shook its head and said, "It's just my second primordial spirit and a spare corporeal body. Even though the fate energy is separated, it's just to confuse the heavenly secrets. Their essence is the same. My third true name is still Chun-Ang. However, in order to separate the fate energy and conceal the heavenly secrets, I can't say my true name. Otherwise, the fate energy will be the same, and it will be easy for others to predict. The two of you shall call yourselves these two names for now." Chapter 492. Although the great Asura's supreme demon body was an armored monster with an extraordinary face, there was no flaw when it transformed into Chun-Ang's original appearance. This was because the supreme demon body was not a living creature, nor was it made of flesh and blood. It was like the celestial beings of the Nirvana world and the ancient innate gods. It was the manifestation of the great Tao. Therefore, it was ever-changing and did not have a fixed form. Sounds of nature. The devil body clad in towering armor, with red arms and feet stepping on a Chinese alligator, was only a Dharma form. It did not prevent Chun-Ang from walking with his own appearance. Moreover, even a perfected golden immortal wouldn't be able to notice such a change. If it was not for this supernatural power, how could the Asura in the Blood Sea compete with Buddhism? It even tempted many sons of Buddha to fall. With the transformation of Chun-Ang's demon body, it was not difficult for others to see through it. However, there was a flaw in Tan Yun. Although she did not know much, if she fell into the hands of Xianyuan the Great, it would not be difficult for him to see the problem with his wisdom. He immediately separated a strand of blood god and planted it into Tan Yun's mind. With the natural function of the blue sky underworld water, he modified her memory. Now, she only remembered that Qin Gang, the blood god, intended to plot against Gu Haozi and expose his identity as Hanba. However, she did not expect that Hanba would devour many blood gods and trigger the transformation of the demon body. At the critical moment, Chun-Ang activated the prohibition spell. With the help of the cold spring spell, he resealed Hanba, who had not completed his transformation. Qin Gang also escaped with serious injuries. Now that Gu Haozi's demon body had been formed, the prohibition spell could not hold him for long. Therefore, the two of them went around asking for help. Then, he sent this memory to the blood god's mana hidden in the demon body. Through a vague feeling, the Lord of Five Desires knew the truth. In a cave of the sea country 10,000 miles away, a man dressed in southern barbaric clothing suddenly jumped up in rage. He turned into a streak of blood light and sucked up all the essence and blood of the people who were captured outside the cave. He didn't even let go of the souls who were usually unwilling to commit sins and reincarnate. His illusionary figure dissipated, revealing a bloody shadow with a blurred face and a ferocious and terrifying face. Lord Five Evils sensed Qin Gang, who was faintly discernible and intermittent, as if he could die at any moment. He yelled, "You've ruined my plan. How can I let you go?" He used his mana and the blood god's mana tortured Qin Gang until he was hovering between life and death. It was only because of the important matter that he stopped and sent a thought over, "Get over here and see me." When Chun-Ang received the voice transmission, he sneered coldly. He had already used his Yuan Shun heavenly star to pinpoint the position of Lord Five Desires. He also took the opportunity to trigger his nameless Een flame and sent the blood sea true water into his body. Lord Five Desires only felt anger burning in his heart. Although he used his true chi to suppress the demonic thoughts, he didn't take it to heart. The heart of the demon sect was actually the most important because there were often external demons and internal demons causing trouble. It was easy for the demons to devour one's true self and be doomed eternally. However, how could these demons have such knowledge? They just treated it as a normal reaction. Those old demons who really understood the situation didn't want to remind them, afraid that it would increase their own doom. How could the blood god planted by Chun-Ang be ordinary? If Lord Five Desires didn't have any distracting thoughts, it would be fine. Otherwise, every distracting thought would be nourishment for the blood god's growth. As long as one couldn't see one's true self and understand the difference between the thoughts of one's true self and the nameless distracting thoughts, there would be countless distracting thoughts every day. Sooner or later, the blood god of river Styx would devour one's true self and become a blood god controlled by Chen-Ong. Moreover, during this process one wouldn't feel anything wrong. Instead, one's magic power would increase by leaps and bounds. If one didn't understand that this was a sign of the blood god's magic power being eroded, one would mistakenly think that the magic power of the blood god sutra required endless distracting thoughts to improve. If Xianyuan the Great was here, he would naturally be wary of the distracting thoughts and deal with them by suppressing the external demons. Although it couldn't remove the hidden danger, it wouldn't be difficult to make it difficult for Chen-Ong to use his methods. However, although Lord Five Desires was valued by Xianyuan the Great, how could he understand the principle of the demon sect using demons to control demons and not to be controlled by demons? He thought that the demon sect could do as they pleased, but he didn't know that there was a principle of following one's heart and nature. If one didn't follow one's true nature, one would be considered an external demon in the demon sect and needed to be eradicated. The demon sect followed the heart, while the Buddhist sect collected the heart. Although the methods were different, the heart didn't change. It was a round, shining, indomitable heart that couldn't be worn down by thousands of tribulations. Therefore, the Buddha and the demon were two sides of the same body. If Chen-Ong manifested it with the blood sea true water, it would be the river Styx blood demon primordial spirit. If it manifested with the blue sky netherworld true water, it would be the Ksitigarbha's great wish Dharmakaya. Just as Chen-Ong was slowly savoring the Buddha and the demon sect, the female cultivator Tan Yun had already woken up. When she saw Chen-Ong, she immediately asked, "Did you let the demon escape?" When she heard that the seal was intact, she heaved a sigh of relief and said, "It's all because I was blinded by lard that I was deceived by him and almost caused a disaster. Chen Daoyu, that demon is very powerful, so the cold springs restriction won't be able to trap him for long. Fellow Daoyu, please go and invite your friends to come and slay the demon. I will also go and invite Xian Ru Shen Nun and the three celestials of Eastern Sea. We must refine him to death." This idea of hers was originally planted by Chen-Ong, so how could he refuse? He nodded and said, "That's how it should be." He then used the golden ship to send her up. After Tan Yun bid farewell to him, she used the Ice Soul Divine Light escape and went straight to Eastern Sea. Chen-Ong calculated that it would take about 3 months for her to call for reinforcements, which was enough for him to stir up a storm. Immediately, his physical body transformed into a black-clothed, cold-faced young man. Looking at the golden ship beneath his feet, he smiled and said, "This treasure is too eye-catching, I'm afraid I can't use it anymore." Then, he reached out and wiped the 12 Moons waterscape sword. The watercolored sword light's gold attribute was awakened, and a layer of silver hairs covered it. The one sky water banner in his left hand shook, and it turned into a black banner. His expression was cold, and his hair was disheveled. He wore a black Taoist robe and a pair of straw sandals. He held a demonic banner in his hand, and he looked like an unorthodox cultivator. With a shake of his hand, a water mirror circular light appeared. After taking a look at his own appearance, Chen-Ong nodded in satisfaction. Then, he used the silver conveyance light and went straight to where the venerable one of 5 desires was. The celestial river's mana corresponded with the celestial stars, and it merged with the sword light. Then, he teleported thousands of miles in the air and landed on a bustling sea. This sea country had a flourishing population. There were dozens of islands with a population of about 4 to 5 million people. However, the system was rather peculiar. It was a sea country ruled by dozens of clans, unlike the Great Ming dynasty, which had a common ruler. These clans were the rulers of the islands, and most of them were cultivators of unorthodox schools from overseas who had mana. They settled down here and established their clans. The population of the sea country depended on them to live, and they were considered the private properties of the cultivators of the unorthodox schools on the islands. The children of these cultivator clans ate and wore the same things as the nobles, and their words were the law. Because of this, the people on the island were no strangers to cultivators. When they saw Chen Ang's conveyance light from afar, someone came to welcome him. Chen Ang saw that the island was decorated with lanterns and colored banners. There were golden flowers and silver trees everywhere, and the stairs were made of white jade. There were even 3 tall pavilions built at the port. The beams were made of sandalwood, and the pillars were made of gold and jade. Then, he saw a gray conveyance light descending on the tall pavilion. Someone went up to welcome him, and the conveyance light descended as well. He saw a rich man dressed like a green-robed butler coming up, and he asked, "Is there a happy event here? Why are you welcoming cultivators from all over?" The green-robed butler smiled and bowed. "Immortal Master, you may not know this, but our island master, Old Man Baiyan, is celebrating his 200th birthday. He has invited immortals from all over. As long as they are willing to come, they will be given gifts. Immortal Master, please come with me." Chapter 493. Chen Ang followed the green-clothed butler and slowly learned about the situation. This island was the largest and most populated island in the archipelago. The clan on this island was the bloodline of the rogue cultivator, Old Man White Crag. They had settled here for 100 years. Because Old Man White Crag's surname was Lu, they were called the Lu clan. The White Rock Elder was also one of the individual cultivators in the archipelago with the highest cultivation. He was already an individual immortal, and was quite famous overseas. The status of overseas Taoist cultivators was highly respected. Along the way, Chen Ang was also treated as a distinguished guest. The steward in green brought him to the front of a mansion. Another 2 servants came up to invite him to settle down in the building, and 4 maids came up to serve him. Chen Ang couldn't stand it and asked them to leave. This building was in a corner of the huge mansion. Outside the window there were gardens everywhere. It occupied hundreds of square meters, and there were more than 300 pavilions. Even the Ming dynasty's palace couldn't compare. Thinking of the sea people on this island who could only live in thatched houses, were skinny and had no clothes to cover their bodies, Chen Ang couldn't help but sneer. Although he sensed that the Lord of 5 Aphrodisiacs was in the most gorgeous building, Chen Ang didn't want to act rashly. Every day, he only used spells to attract the Son of Blood and devoured his original self. 3 days later, someone came to invite the owner of this place, Immortal White Rock, for his birthday. When Chen Ang arrived at the banquet hall hosted by the Old Man White Crag, he was among the last few people. Presumably, the Lu family did not pay much attention to him. When they invited people, they treated him according to their relationship and abilities. Seeing that Chen Ang was young, they did not take him seriously. Chen Ang arrived late and had to sit with the last one. He didn't mind. When Chen Ang arrived, an individual cultivator who was sitting near the front came out and shouted, "The barbarians of the Black Sand Island are here to perform spells for the White Rock Elder to celebrate his boundless longevity." This name sounded familiar to Chen Ang. He seemed to have killed a person who claimed to be from the Black Sand Island in the Mermaid Kingdom's Cheonghai Kingdom's palace. Now that he heard it, the omen was not good. The entire Lu family should be wiped out. Then, Man Xian cupped his fists towards a pale-faced young man who was standing beside Old Man White Crag. He wore a golden ring in his hair and said, "Congratulations to Prince Lu Guan. May you live a long life and enjoy immortal happiness forever." The young man grinned and said, "Uncle Man, you don't have to be so polite. Please congratulate grandfather on my behalf. I have a blood coral collected from the bottom of the sea. If you can make grandfather happy, I will give it to you." When the man heard this, he was overjoyed. He bowed and said with a flattering smile, "Thank you for your reward, Your Highness." He made a comical expression, causing the young man to laugh out loud. One of the wandering cultivators beside him whispered, "Young Master Lu may be young, but he is already the #1 young hero of the 46 islands. He is indeed a cultivation genius." The person beside him raised his voice even louder, "Yes, I heard that young Master Lu can already control the sword and fly in the sky. It's really amazing." Although the two of them whispered to each other, everyone in the hall could hear them. Who in the hall could not tell what they were thinking? Looking at the proud look on the young man, Lu Guan, many of them scolded in their hearts, "Bootlicker." Even old man White Crag, who was sitting on the main seat, had a happy look on his face. He stroked his beard and laughed. He turned his head to the left and whispered something to a barbarian with triangular eyes. It was obvious that he was praising his grandson. This man was Xian Yuan the Great's first disciple, Lord of 5 Desires. Chen Ong came here for this man and couldn't help but take a few more glances. Unexpectedly, Lord of 5 Desires was very sharp. He suddenly raised his head and looked back. His mana was not as strong as others, but he could tell that Chen Ong was not an ordinary person. Not to mention anything else, just the aura he exuded was something that no one present could compare to. Instantly, he became interested and looked at Chen Ong unexpectedly. His gaze was seen by someone sitting below, and he was instantly angered. Lu Guan's happy look disappeared, and he could no longer maintain his calmness. He cursed in his heart, "Where did this kid come from? How dare he spoil my plans?" Lord of 5 Desires is a direct disciple of the West Kunlun sect. She is the first disciple of enlightened Master Xian Yuan the Great. My grandfather had to beg many favors before she was willing to look at me. If I were to become her disciple, I would never be able to enjoy her for the rest of my life. This kid is young and good-looking. Judging from Reverend 5 Desires' expression, it seems like he is quite interested in him. You dare to spoil my plans, I will make sure you suffer the consequences. Although he was shrewd, he couldn't help but reveal his true colors in his anger. Man Xian had already started his performance. He breathed out a cloud and waved his hand. Many golden-armored deities and high-crowned true immortals flew out from his sleeves, riding dragons and cranes. A heavenly palace appeared in the cloud. There were immortals feasting and heavenly maidens dancing. Among them, the man sitting on the main seat was the Emperor of Heaven. Coincidentally, he had the appearance of Old Man White Crag. The first Crown Prince also had the appearance of Lu Guan. Instantly, the hall was filled with cheers, but Chen Ong didn't know whether to laugh or cry. The Celestial Emperor from the upper realm let out a sigh. The 18 generations of ancestors of the Lu clan were going to die. He didn't know what kind of courage he had to have to use this as a show. Indeed, the more stupid one is, the bolder one is. Even if he knew that the Celestial Emperor from the upper realm wouldn't cause trouble, Mount Amei wouldn't dare to do this even if they were given 18 times more courage. Yet, he saw it in the banquet of a heretical aristocratic family that was like an ant compared to Mount Amei. Chen Ong actually had a feeling that this trip was not in vain just because of this matter. At this moment, the performance had reached its climax. Man Xian pointed his finger, and a rope flew out and hung on the cloud palace. He climbed up the rope and disappeared into the clouds. Then, a little man with the same facial features as him came out of the heavenly palace. He first kowtowed to the Emperor of Heaven, then to the Crown Prince of Heaven, and was rewarded with a celestial peach. Then, he flew down from the clouds. In a flash, Man Xian jumped down from the clouds. He held a big peach in his hand and presented it to the Celestial Emperor. Man Xian went to the heavenly palace and asked for a peach from the Celestial Emperor to present to Old Man White Crag and His Majesty Lu Guan. May the Old Man Xian live as long as the heavens, and enjoy immortal happiness forever. As soon as he said this, everyone cheered. Many people took the opportunity to bow down and shouted in unison, "May the old man Exile and the crown prince live as long as the heavens, and enjoy immortal happiness forever." The flattery of these people caused Chen Ong to be exposed. There were only a few people sitting still in the hall like him, and he was the only one sitting below, which made him stand out. Old Man White Crag was displeased when he saw this, but he didn't want to cause trouble for the birthday celebration, so he pretended not to see it. Lu Guan was even more furious, and secretly gave Man Exile a look. Man Exile understood and suddenly said, "The king of hell in the underworld heard about the old man Exile's birthday celebration, and he also sent a congratulatory gift. Allow me to get it for the old man Exile." He waved his hand and a black fog appeared on the ground. It really looked like the abyss of the 9 earths, and there was a ghost city underneath it. Oxhead, Horseface, Yen Jun, and the Emperor could be seen vaguely. Chapter 494. Chen Ong could only see illusions forming in front of him. It was as if he was in the 18 levels of hell, filled with the torture of evil spirits. How could he not know that he had fallen into someone's trap? Although this kind of thing can hardly confuse him, the naked eye can still see the surrounding hall. The surrounding guests all have a look of watching a good show. His own image is also projected in the illusion, is about to be captured by the imp. Man Exile used the paper doll to create a scene of hell, and Chen Ong was imprisoned in the hell of tongue-pulling. The illusion in front of him was also the torture of evil spirits, who were trying to pull out Chen Ang's tongue with pliers. Yen Jun, who was in the middle, shouted, "The human world's patriarch by Yen is blessed. How dare you be a demon during his birthday? Drag him away and walk away from the 18 levels of hell, but if you come again, you will be sent to reincarnation in the path of the beast." Chen Ong looked at Lu Guan, who was laughing coldly, and Old Man Bai Yen was also laughing, pretending not to see anything. Chen Ong laughed coldly in his heart. There is no door to fortune or misfortune, only people bring it upon themselves. Is it not good to be alive? Did Old Man Bai Yen think that he has lived too long, so he came to find me? Although the illusion in front of him was extremely tragic, Chen Ong sat there leisurely, and with a thought, the arcane energy of the heaven river of underworld entered the illusion black fog. The scenery of hell changed, and Man Exile was shrunk by 10 times, swapped with his paper doll. Then, the heaven river of underworld triggered a bit of consciousness, falling into the illusion and turning into the underworld general of underworld. It was the will of the underworld general of underworld, formed by the heaven river of underworld. When it saw this, it was furious and shouted, "How dare you? Do you think you will not enter reincarnation?" He raised his sword, and no matter how Man Exile begged for mercy, he cut him into 8 pieces on the spot. He glared at the other cultivators in the hall, smiled coldly, cupped his fists to thank Chen Ong, and sucked Man Exile's soul away. Everyone felt a chill run down their spines. Only 5 Lust and a few others felt their expressions change. They knew how powerful this was. Everyone else, including Old Man Whitestone, thought that it was just an illusion. Even though their expressions were unsightly, they only felt like they had lost face. Chen Ong was the first to reveal himself. He cupped his fists and sighed. That fellow Taoist came to the underworld with me. Unfortunately, he was discovered by Yen Jun. He couldn't escape in time and was chopped into 8 pieces by the patrolling netherworld generals. What a pity! As soon as he finished speaking, the black fog dispersed, revealing only Man Exile's mutilated corpse. A commotion broke out in the hall. Someone stood up and angrily rebuked, "Who are you? How dare you commit murder in Ancestor Whitestone's hall?" The White Crag Elder's face turned ashen. He was obviously furious. On the other hand, the Lord of 5 Desires and the other unorthodox disciples looked serious. The White Crag Elder suppressed his emotions and shouted, "All right. It's a joyous occasion, don't disturb my birthday banquet." After he finished speaking, he coldly ignored Chen Ong, showing off his prestige. How could such an ant-like person attract Chen Ang's attention? Unfortunately, he was doomed. Lu Guan stood up and said, "Everyone, please give my grandfather face and specially come to congratulate him. I have presented many gifts and displayed my best spells. I wonder what kind of spells do you have? Can I offer them to everyone? Please give me face." Chen Ong thought to himself, "Do you think I'm a monkey for you to see? Who do you think you are? You are not worthy of me giving you face. Do you know that the person who asked me to give you face is already dead?" Lu Guan saw that Lu Guan spoke politely, unlike the Mermaid Palace, who killed everyone in the hall. Lu Guan smiled patiently and said, "It's just a small skill. I don't want to embarrass myself." The White Crag Elder, who was sitting on the main seat, had an ugly expression. Lu Guan was also smiling coldly at him. The surrounding lackeys started to clamor, "Brat, don't be so shameless! How dare a mere child offend Master Lu? If you still refuse to kneel and beg for mercy, Ancestor White Crag will definitely kill your entire family. Impudent! You are courting death." Chen Ong was almost amused. He stood up and looked around. "Since everyone is so enthusiastic, I will not hide my skills. Let me show you my unique spell, the Great Liberation Celestial Light." Lu Guan thought that he had given in and thought, "It's too late to bow down now." He had already regarded Chen Ong as a dead man. He looked down at Chen Ong and sneered, "The Great Liberation Celestial Light? How arrogant!" The White Crag Elder looked at him lovingly and said to Chen Ong in a commanding tone, "Tell us about it." The esteemed Five Aphrodisiac looked at the two of them in astonishment. He was rather bewildered. However, Chen Ong did not seem to mind his insulting tone at all. He smiled and said, "When this great liberation celestial light shines on a person's body, it will give birth to 12 types of heavenly flowers. It will make one sweat, and one will hear the sound of tranquil music. It will cleanse one's body, refine one's immortal bones, and ascend." When he said this, the crowd burst into laughter. Everyone looked at him as if he was a clown. Someone shook his head and laughed. "Nonsense, how can there be such a thing?" Lu Guan also asked, "Is what you said true?" Chen Ong laughed and said, "It's absolutely true. If you don't believe me, let me show you." When he said this, everyone looked at him. Chen Ong flipped his right palm, and the divine light of magnetism of Een had already shone on Old Man White Crag. The divine light of magnetism rubbed against Old Man White Crag, and Old Man White Crag's soul was destroyed. His corpse turned into ashes, and only a wisp of green smoke remained. At this moment, everyone was stunned. The sound of a wine glass falling to the ground could be clearly heard in the hall. Chen Ong slowly retracted his right palm and laughed. "Everyone, look, the White Crag Elder has become an immortal and ascended." Lu Guan's face turned green and his lips trembled. The crowd was in an uproar. Someone whispered, "Is this great liberation celestial light real?" Even the esteemed Five Aphrodisiac and the others looked at Chen Ong in astonishment. In the entire hall, only Chen Ong was leisurely. He even had the mood to smile at Lu Guan. When Lu Guan saw the look in his eyes, he was so frightened that he sat paralyzed on the chair. After a long time, when the White Crag Elder did not appear, he struggled to get up and kneeled at the feet of the esteemed Five Aphrodisiac. He cried, "Esteemed one! Esteemed one! That murderer tried to kill my grandfather in broad daylight. Esteemed one, you have to uphold justice for me." The esteemed Five Aphrodisiac coldly shook off Lu Guan's hand and smiled at Chen Ong. He said, "Didn't your grandfather obtain benevolence and become an immortal? What's the use of begging me?" Lu Guan's forehead was full of sweat and he begged incessantly. The esteemed Five Aphrodisiac became impatient with him. He waved his sleeve and flung Lu Guan away. Lu Guan sat paralyzed on the ground. When he saw the indifferent look on Chen Ang's face, he suddenly shouted, "Evil Taoist! Everyone, let's kill that evil Taoist!" Chen Ong sighed. Suddenly, lightning struck down and killed 70% of the guests and young Master Lu Guan. He laughed and said, "The White Crag Elder is in heaven and can't bear to part with this grandson of his. He has summoned everyone up for another feast and begged me to send them on their way." He turned his head and asked the remaining people, "What do you think?" The remaining people in the hall were trembling. How could they dare to talk back? They could only agree with a trembling voice. Chapter 495. After Chen Ang's killing spree, there were less than 10% of the unorthodox cultivators left in the hall. With the help of Venerable Five Obsessions, what was supposed to be a birthday banquet was turned into a funeral for the entire Lu clan. The good thing was that the black-robed young man that Chen Ong had transformed into did not arouse any suspicions. Even if he said that he was from the mystic door, those who witnessed his killing spree would still have some doubts. Chen Ong glanced at the many people in the hall. He had killed almost all of the people who made a ruckus earlier. Now, who was left here that did not know what was going on? They saw that Chen Ong was ruthless. Although they were angry, they were even more afraid. The two great liberation celestial lights, just now were indeed ruthless. The famous old man White Crag did not even leave a corpse behind. These people were not as capable as old man White Crag, so they were very obedient. Seeing this, Chen Ong shouted, "Is there anyone else who is envious of your celestial cultivation? I will not hesitate to fulfill your wish." Chen Ong repeated this twice, but no one dared to reply. Most of the remaining people covered their faces and left. Only a dim light could be seen flying away. Chen Ong turned his gaze to the three people in the hall who had not moved yet. He heard Venerable Five Obsessions say, "My friend's great vital divine light is very marvelous and admirable. How should I address you?" Chen Ong said plainly, "My Taoist name is River Styx." Venerable Five Obsessions could hear the faint murderous intent in his words. The sharpness in it made his heart turn cold. He could not help but think, what a murderous talent. This person is really cruel and merciless. I am afraid that he would even dare to kill me if there is a disagreement. That fellow Qin Gang ruined my plans. Now that Gu Hao Zi's cultivation has improved, but he is trapped by the seal. If I want Master to refine him into a blood deity, I will need the help of fellow demon sect cultivators. This person is so powerful, how can I not make use of him? Then he secretly deduced Chen Ang's background, only to feel that the mysteries of the heavens were obscure, among which there was a copious murderous aura of indiscriminate killing that traversed across. Then he saw two streaks of sword aura, one was Yuantu, the other was Avicii. His heart could not help but be in a perilous state. It's actually the orthodox demonic path. This person's orthodoxy was indeed from the Blood Sea. It was probably an ancient orthodoxy that appeared out of nowhere due to the appearance of the heavenly demon. In this way, this person will definitely enter my family. With that thought, he smiled and said, "So it's fellow Taoist River Styx. I can see that fellow Taoist's dermic powers are also from the Sea of Blood lineage. Today's celebration of Old Man White Crag's birthday is just a pretense. I have invited all of you here because I have something important to discuss. It has to do with the appearance of the Southern Sea heavenly demon a few days ago. Our demonic path has not had a heavenly demon leader for hundreds of years. Now that the senior has taken a step forward, it is a matter of great importance. That is why I am shamelessly asking for everyone's help." Other than Chen Ong and Venerable Five Aphrodisiac, there were still two people in the hall who had not left. They were probably the demonic path people invited by Venerable Five Aphrodisiac. Chen Ong secretly observed their dermic powers. As expected, they were the best among the rogue immortals, old demons who had lived for many years. One of the naked barbarian women sneered and said, "Five Aphrodisiac, if you have something to say it quickly. The appearance of the heavenly demon has caused everyone to move. If it is just a small matter, don't blame me, Hu Jiao Jiao, for not giving you face." The other man in linen also snorted coldly. His attitude was self-evident. Venerable Five Aphrodisiac pondered for a while, then slowly said, "Other than my friend River Styx, who was invited by me, there are also Fairy Lady Wan Miao, Su Feinyang, Xuandu's Feather Warrior Lin Yuan, Lianshan Cult Master Tushan Old Man, and others who are not here yet. Fairy Lady Wan Miao also invited a few friends from the extreme West cult, a few fellow cultivators who studied with her on Mount Wutai, a few juniors from the Western Devil cult and Southern Devil cult, and the abandoned disciples of the Heavenly Lust cult. If they don't come, I can't say it out loud. But my Shifu, Xianyuan the Great, has predicted this. We have to invite all of our fellow cultivators. If there are only a few of us, we will definitely become a thorn in the side of those hypocrites." Chen Ong could tell that Hu Jiaojiao was from the Devil cult, and the man in linen was from another sect. Chen Eng's current corporeal body was the supreme heavenly devil body. What kind of fiend god could escape from his senses? At first glance, he could tell that Hu Jiaojiao's natal fiend gods were the 6 devils of the world of desire. In this world, the fiend god with such power must be the disciple of the Red Body Cult's master, Jiu Pan Pu. The Red Body Cult's master was originally a barbarian woman. Later, because she was disappointed in love, she entered the mountain out of jealousy and anger. She met an elder of the Devil cult who had been in closed-door training for many years. She was taught 3 devil scriptures and was ordered to establish the Red Body Cult. At that time, Jiu Pan Pu became a new force in the cult. Almost no one could defeat her. The supreme heavenly devil cult's master boasted that the devils she cultivated were either evil souls or the souls of zombies, skeletons, and unorthodox demons. They did not harm mortals. However, after being warned by the long-brow spiritual master, they cleaned up the cult, and the cult rules became stricter. This Hu Jiaojiao was probably the abandoned disciple of the Red Body Cult, someone who had left the cult in the past. And that man in hemp clothes should be the disciple of Mount Hua's master Lai Hua. But Mount Hua had too many evil followers, so he did not know who he was. Since the 5 evils Zhan had already invited so many people from the devil cult, the general situation was already in place. Therefore, Chen Eng's usefulness had dropped a lot. Moreover, if the 5 evils Zhan was allowed to take the initiative, it would be easier to lure out his cautious master, Xianyuan the Great. With this thought in mind, Chen Ong suddenly said, "Why is the 5 evils Zhan being secretive? Since it has something to do with the heavenly devil, this matter cannot escape from helping that senior escape. If I want to ascend to the Azura demon world, I must obtain that senior's teachings. If you know the whereabouts of senior heavenly devil, I will naturally do my best to help. Why do you need to care about it?" His voice had not yet fallen when Hu Jiaojiao and the old man were shaken. She rushed to the 5 evils Zhan and said, "5 evils, is this true?" Without waiting for the 5 evils Zhan to reply, she muttered to herself, "Yes. Unless this is the case, how can it be called the general situation? Fellow Taoist River Styx, the 5 evils Zhan, I'm afraid you already know that Senior Heavenly Devil is in trouble and wants to use it to fight against the righteous path." The man in hemp clothes also excitedly said, "If we can save that Senior Heavenly Devil, not to mention the benefits of magic treasures and Tao techniques, if we can be accepted as a disciple, we will also have the hope of achieving the Heavenly Devil fruit in the future. For you people from the Devil cult, this is very important. This matter will certainly attract the mystic door and the righteous path to stop it. It will be impossible to succeed unless we invite all the people from the same path." Hu Jiaojiao did not finish listening to his words. She excitedly interrupted, "I agree to this matter. 5 evils Zhan, among us, I'm afraid only you know the whereabouts of that senior. I will take you as the leader this time, but please tell us the location so that we can study it together." The 5 evils Zhan did not expect Chen Ong and the others to figure out the crux of the problem so quickly. His face turned ugly, and he said, "Hu Jiaojiao, since I am the leader, I should be the one to make the plan. What do you mean by this? The man in hemp clothes sneered. Now that the righteous path has not reacted in time, with the combined strength of the four of us, we may be able to save the senior heavenly devil. Won't you ruin our plan by delaying it? Seeing that the five evils Jean seemed to be persuaded, he went one step further and said, Don't think that this is an important secret. Every minute that passes, this secret loses some of its value. If the righteous path launches a full-scale attack and takes over the place where that senior is sealed, what is the use of keeping this secret? The five evils Jean sneered. How arrogant! Heavenly Devil Gu Hao Zi was sealed by Taoist Red Staff in the past. The restrictive spell is extremely powerful. Even when he achieved the supreme heavenly devil body, he could not escape. Who do you think you are? How dare you boast that you can help the senior escape? Chapter 496. After they turned against five obsessions, the atmosphere became tense. The man in sackcloth wanted to say something, but when he heard Immortal Red Staff of the Great Wilderness, he shut his mouth. Although Immortal Red Staff was not famous, disciples of big sects like him knew that he was one of the earth spirits with the highest cultivation in the universe. It was only because he could not bear to lose his disciples that he could not get the celestial immortal karma rank and ascend to heaven. The skyscraping devil was sealed by such a figure. Even if the skyscraping devil broke out of the seal, he would have to be careful, not to mention an individual immortal like him. Seeing that they did not press him any further, five obsessions flicked his sleeves and said, We need to work together to solve this problem. We must not fight among ourselves and let the hypocrites of the mystic door laugh at us. Several fellow Taoists have already sent word to me. They are traveling through the night and will arrive in a few days. Let's wait for them first. After that, they parted on bad terms, forcing five obsessions to tell them where the skyscraping devil was sealed was fruitless. Chen Ong returned to the attic where he lived a few days ago. The Liu family on the island had all been killed by five obsessions, and most of the servants and maids had left. Only a few clever manservants did not run away with their belongings. Instead, they stayed in Chen Ang's attic to fawn on him. There were still a few days before the other evil men arrived. Chen Ong thought that it was not appropriate to use the magic he had learned, and the magic weapons he refined were all from the righteous path. It would be better to practice a few more diabolism skills to show his identity as a direct disciple of the diabolism, River Styx. Besides, his blood river Dharma power was both righteous and demonic. He could switch between the blue sky underworld and the blood sea. It would be a pity if he did not cultivate the identity of a giant of the diabolism. The magic of the diabolism is fierce. I am proficient in many mystic magic arts, but some of them are evil and I do not know them. As for the other powerful skills, it takes a long time or a coincidence. In this way, only the blood flame, devil light, golden knife, and fiend god can be cultivated in a few days. Thinking of the two flying yikshaws he killed in the earth lung, he could not help but feel pity. They are good materials for refining fiend god. Even in the white bone fire formation, there are skeletons from ancient times, which can help me refine fiend god. It is a pity that I did not have this identity at that time. As a righteous man, it is not easy to practice those fiend god magic arts. Under the earth lung of the copper coconut island, there was an ancient disaster. Moreover, there was the magnetic peak, which attracted the dark and bad luck of the earth within a radius of tens of thousands of miles. Who knows how many evil spirits from ancient times are hidden here? Zombies and skeletons that have cultivated for many years are good materials for the mystic Orthodox sect to refine fiend god magic art. It is a pity that I did not have this identity at that time. It is not easy for a righteous person to practice those fiend god magic arts. Fortunately, in order to refine a fiend god, he did not need to rely on those vile souls and zombies. The souls of the unorthodox path and demons were also excellent materials. There were 3 living souls on this island now, and there would be more in the future. Chen Ong did not need that many people for his plan. He could find a few blind and unlucky ones and kill them, and he would be able to gather a few living souls. Based on Chen Ang's current situation, Hu Jiaojiao's soul is evil and full of spiritual energy. She is also a cultivator with a good foundation. There is no better person to use to refine the 7 holy fiend gods. The hemp-clothed man has thick bones and a tough body. He can be used to refine fiend god magic art. As for the venerable of 5 sects, since he planted the blood sea true water, he can only refine him into a blood god. Chen Ong calculated one by one and suddenly felt his eyes light up. He does not need to worry about the materials for the experiment anymore. The way of creation is not necessarily a magic treasure or a panacea. The fiend god magic arts, which is born from death and reborn from death, is a strange existence between living and dead. It may be more in line with the original meaning of creation. Like the supreme heavenly demon immortal body that Chen Ong is using now, isn't it the merit fruit of creation that he is most proud of in this world? It is also the most enlightening to him. Anyway, the endless karma can be borne by this body, and it will not affect the original body. Why should I worry too much? He silently operated his primordial spirit, and the blood river Dharma power communicated with the boundless blood sea, absorbing the blood sea true water that seeped into the void. At the same time, he activated the nameless hellfire in the supreme heavenly demon body's spiritual consciousness. Although Chen Ang's original self has entered this body, many devil thoughts are still in Gu Hao Zi's spiritual consciousness. However, there is no original self. Under the pressure, he opened his mouth and spat out a devil fire, igniting the blood sea true water. Seeing the blood flame accumulating, 13 blood-colored talismans were born from it, and refined by his primordial spirit. This way, the blood flame can absorb the void chi of vitality and communicate with the blood sea to nourish itself. It no longer needs Chen Ang's Dharma power to supplement it, and this spell can be considered as a small success. Chen Ong opened his mouth and swallowed the blood flame, and turned back to the original form of the great Azura supreme heavenly demon body. He burrowed into the ground and searched for a few unexploited mineral veins in the archipelago. He refined the blood flame into golden chi, and then carved many restrictions, turning the tens of millions of golden chi in these mineral veins into a golden blade devil fire forbidden spell, and cultivated another spell. With the last bit of time left, he used the earth lung white bone een fire stored in the golden ship of creation, and used the blood sea true water to condense the evil spirit, and refined it into the white bone 5 een demons. They were like 5 tall white bone demons, and their bodies were as hard as Vajra. They had infinite strength, and could change at will, and were powerful. It belonged to the mystic orthodox sect's method, and although it was not as secretive as the formless demons, it was still very powerful. It had its own merits compared to Hu Jiaojiao's 6 desires demons. On this day, when Chen Ong was cultivating the demons underground, he saw a grayish-white light flying towards him from afar. Under the blood river Dharma eye, he saw a demon with een fire under his feet, rolling over. His face was full of malevolence, and his eyebrows were vertical, and his green eyes were bright. He looked so long that it could stop a child from crying, and his face was full of bad luck. That person was full of malevolence, and with one look, one could tell that he was a person who slaughtered living beings, and committed the sin of killing. The resentment of living beings went deep into his soul, and the roots of evil were deeply planted. It was impossible for him to achieve Tao, but he was a good material to refine evil spirits. Instantly, Chen Ang's heart was filled with malevolence, and he quietly hid his sword light. When the demon passed by his head, a blood-red sword light wrapped around it, and pierced through his body. His soul hung on the sword light, and he retracted it. The white bone 5 een demon also had to pounce on him and grab his corpse. Not to mention that he had a good quality heterodox demon soul, with malevolence rooted in his soul, There was also a resentment of a violent death, and it could be said to be a top-grade material for the demonic path. Just the tyrannical body, the many evil spirits, blood, and bones in the magical treasure pouch made Chin Ang's trip worthwhile. Not only did he improve the White Bone 5 Een Demon by 1 level, but he also refined a Mystic Een Demon to supplement it, and it became even more powerful. Since there were such benefits, Chen Ong hid nearby, and when he saw a heterodox light flying over, he took them by surprise and used his flying sword to ambush them. In 3 days, he killed 4 waves of demons, and the rest were either not guilty of crimes that deserved death, or they still had value, and their luck was not exhausted. Chapter 497. After 3 days, Chen Ong realized that he could no longer do anything. He returned to his room and waited for the Reverend of 5 Desires to invite him. In the afternoon of the same day, a boy came to pay his respects. Chen Ong found him familiar. He seemed to be one of the attendants at the banquet hall a few days ago. But now he had some superficial mana. Chen Ong guessed that it was the corrosive power of the blood god's mana. It was not the right path. Although it was fast and convenient, it was exchanging his life for a moment of supernatural power. Knowing that this was the Reverend of 5 Desires method, Chu Li sighed in his heart. The unorthodox path was indeed not to be regretted even if they died. Chu Li sighed and waited for a long time. The boy became more and more fearful until his legs were trembling. He did not dare to look at Chen Ong directly. "Why are you so afraid of me?" Chen Ong asked in confusion. The boy knelt on the ground and kowtowed. "I saw your divine might the day before yesterday. You freed Ancestor Baiyin and the other celestial masters. I did not dare to look at you." Only now did Chen Ong understand. With a strange expression on his face, he asked him to lead the way and casually placed a panacea into his bosom as a reward. With the help of the Peiyuan panacea, perhaps there was a chance for him to enter the Tao. It could be considered a lucky chance for him. The boy brought Chen Ong directly to the main hall where the birthday banquet was held. Chen Eng's brows twitched as he pondered. This was not an auspicious place. The 5 obscenities Reverend was here to gather the heretical people. This was an ominous sign. It seemed that there would be a bloody calamity today. Chen Eng's divination had always been accurate. For example, the Purple Cloud Palace, the Mermaid King's Hall, and the White Crag Elder's birthday banquet. He said that the omen was not good and that there would be a bloody disaster. Although he was the one who did it, the results were accurate. If I were to tell the fortune of an unorthodox sect, it would definitely work every time. Because no matter who it was, I would tell them that they would face a bloody calamity. Then, I would unsheathe my sword and send them to the heavens. I really am an expert in fortune-telling. Everything I say comes true. Chen Ong thought. At this time, there were already more than a dozen people from the unorthodox Devil Tao in the hall. These people were all arrogant and had all kinds of backgrounds. Some were invited by Lord 5 Aphrodisiac, some were invited by Lady Myriad Meow, and some were brought here after hearing the news. None of them were like the leaders of the Alliance, causing the hall to be filled with a foul atmosphere, and the group of evil was in a state of disunity. Chen Eng's arrival was inconspicuous. Other than the Reverend of 5 Desires, Hu Jiao Jiao, and the hemp-robed man, only people like Su Feinyang would notice him. He was just a young man with a childish face. As a member of the evil path, it was unknown whether he was born stupid or deliberately wanted to embarrass the Reverend of 5 Desires, but he actually dared to do such a dirty thing in the hall. Some evil people shouted, "Reverend of 5 Desires, since you invited everyone here, there is no song and dance, and no beauties to send them off. What's the point?" Lord of 5 Aphrodisiacs was well aware of the nature of these heretical demons. Before he could say anything, Su Feinyang and a few of the righteous heretical disciples were already annoyed and went straight to the back of the hall. Chen Ong could see through the nature of these demons and thought to himself, "These people are really useless. If the Lord God is counting on them to stir up trouble, then they will be used to train the disciples of the righteous path. At first, I wanted to support a few people from the evil path who are really brave, but now it seems that most of them are not even comparable to the 3 talents and 2 clouds. Chen Ong suddenly felt a little impatient. After glancing at the evil people in the hall, Chen Ong went to the back of the hall. He saw Su Feinyang coming up to him with a kind and friendly face. She did not seem to be surprised by Chen Ang's appearance. She said, "Fellow Taoist, you look like you are a Taoist cultivator. You are different from the common people. May I know your name? Who is your master?" "My name is Su Feinyang, and I am cultivating in Mount Huang's 5-cloud step." Chen Ong had already changed his appearance. Even someone like Su Feinyang could not see any connection between him and the mysterious perfected cultivator Chen. She only felt that he had a different temperament and was not as weak as the people outside, so she came up to him to befriend him. Chen Ong smiled and said, "My Taoist name is Riverstick. I'm a wandering cultivator who travels the world. I don't have a fixed residence yet." Although Su Feinyang was at loggerheads with Mount Amei and befriended many evil people because of the vengeance of the Hunyuan Patriarch, she was still a righteous person and did not have any other evil deeds. Otherwise, she would not have befriended so many disciples of the Orthodox sections. She also had the intention to befriend Chen Ong and did not hesitate to lower herself to befriend him. This suited Chen Ang's taste, and they had a pleasant conversation. Su Feinyang was a clever person with a wide range of knowledge. She used to be the only concubine of the Hunyuan Patriarch, a grandmaster of the unorthodox sects, so she had high standards. In recent years, she had been focusing on her cultivation in order to seek revenge. She had cultivated the most powerful flying swords left behind by the Hunyuan Patriarch, so her mana and supernatural power had improved tremendously. Chen Ang's intelligence was not to be mentioned. As the two conversed, they were both shocked by each other's abilities. Chen Ong did not hide his knowledge, which allowed Su Feinyang to faintly sense that his cultivation base was extraordinary. Her tone was even more enthusiastic. She only mentioned the arrogance and tyranny of the people of Mount Amei from time to time, and talked about all kinds of bullying of the unorthodox sects and wandering cultivators. Her words were vague, but when she saw that Chen Ong was not interested, she did not make it too explicit. She gently put down the topic and looked for another topic. Suddenly, a commotion was heard in front of them. Chen Ong could not help but divert his attention to look over. He heard someone scolding, "What's that in your pocket? Take it out and let me see." He then heard the boy who went to invite him say, "There's nothing else. It's just a spiritual pill that was bestowed by a senior." The voice asked again, "Do you also have a spiritual pill?" Su Feinyang could not help but frown and said, "To think that he wouldn't even let go of the reward bestowed by the hall's servant. Who would be so uncouth?" Chen Ong apologized to her and stood up to leave. He saw a burly, dark-skinned man at the front of the hall clutching the boy's neck, trying to break the item in his hand. The boy was also unyielding and held on tightly. If it were not for the spiritual pill that had endless magical effects and could not be harmed by ordinary items, the boy would have crushed it. When he saw Chen Ong coming out from the back of the hall, the boy's eyes lit up and he struggled with all his might. This farce had angered the revered one of 5 obsessions. He shouted, "Revered one of Tiger, you are also a great wandering immortal and a former disciple of the heavenly lewd cult. Why are you bickering with this junior?" The dark-skinned man, revered one of Tiger, scolded, "Revered one of 5 obsessions, if it were not for you, I would have killed him long ago. He is just a boy, how could he have this spiritual pill? He must have stolen it from me. Your subordinates are not clean, so why are you asking me?" As he spoke, he loosened his grip a little, allowing the boy to catch his breath. He hoarsely said, "I did not." In his rage, revered one of Tiger increased the strength in his grip. His eyes flashed fiercely and he wanted to squeeze the boy to death. He shouted, "Little bastard, you have no right to speak here." Chapter 498. Supreme Tiger was an abandoned disciple of the Heaven Lust cult. Ever since the cult leader was punished by the heavens and died, most of his disciples were killed. There were a few who were lucky enough to escape, but they did not change their evil ways. They just did not do evil in Middle-earth, and came to the sea to act like a lord. Because of the vastness of the world, there was no one to teach them a lesson, which made them even more arrogant. It was also because the tribulation had arrived that the Tiger Power Sovereign and the others decided to take action. They came to stir up the heavenly demon's birth and provoked Chen-ong. Now that his senior and junior brothers were here, the esteemed 5 obscenities did not dare to provoke them. Otherwise, if they were on the same side, he did not know what they would do. The Honorable Tiger of Strength also used his spiritual consciousness to scan the boy and touched the spirit pill. He felt some benefit. In his Dharma eyes, the spirit pill was stimulated by the spiritual vigor and turned into 5 colors. It had the aura of dragons and tigers. It was the top-grade spirit pill that cultivators desired. This kind of treasure was actually in the bosom of an attendant boy. How could Venerable Tiger not be jealous? Seeing that his fellow disciples who had abandoned him were all here, how could he care about anything else? He immediately wanted to forcefully snatch it away. He truly didn't even care about face. Even though Chen-ong sent the 5-een white bone demon to snatch the boy away from his hands, and even promised to take responsibility for the matter, Supreme Tiger saw that he did not even have the Tao fruit of an itinerant immortal, and looked down on him. A disdainful smile appeared on his face and he sneered. "Where did this little bastard come from? How dare you meddle in my business? Kneel down and kowtow to me 3 times, then I will mercifully send you to reincarnation. If you dare to say anything, the Xian-een beast gathering flag will be waiting for you." Chen-ong smiled and did not want to talk anymore. Supreme 5 obscenities said angrily, "Supreme Tiger, give me some face. Let's forget about today's matter." Supreme Tiger laughed and grinned. 5 obscenities, it is not that I do not want to give you face. These 2 thieves stole my medicinal pills, yet you still want to protect them. That's going against us brothers. Supreme 5 obscenities only knew that this guy was rough, but he did not know that he had a cunning side. As he shouted, he secretly sent a message to his senior and junior brothers. "Senior brothers, don't say that I, Supreme Tiger, do not give you all benefit. Most of what this brat said is true. The pills that he gave to a servant boy are already so extravagant. Who knows how much wealth he has himself? If we brothers work together to get rid of him, all the benefits will be split into 5 and we'll F***king split it evenly. Can we do this?" His senior and junior brothers in the Heavenly Lewd cult were not good people, so after some bargaining, they came to an agreement. As a result, a skinny man who was as thin as a bamboo pole and whose bones could faintly be seen chuckled and stood in front of Venerable 5 Lasciviousness, saying, "Venerable 5 Lasciviousness, it's not that we want to make you lose face, but with us fellow disciples here, we can't let you bully our people. I think my junior brother is right." He looked at Chen-ong and said with a sinister smile, "Since this little brother has a clear conscience, why don't you let me search you? He is just a mortal who has yet to become an immortal. How much wealth can he have? Seal his magic power and let me search his dantian and treasure pouch. If my junior brother wrongly accused a good person, then he will apologize to you. What do you think?" Supreme 5 obscenities was so angry that his face turned red. He did not have any friendship with Chen-ong, but if he let Supreme Skinny treat his guest like this, what face would he have left? He would no longer be the Alliance Master. But if he could think of this, so could the others. Aside from Lady Myriad Meow and a few others, the other heretical disciples were not arrogant people. In order to control these people, the 5 obscenities Venerable didn't invite the 2 seniors who could control the situation. As a result, there were some people who didn't want to be inferior to them and shouted, "The Tiger Force Venerable and the Thin Bone Venerable are right. If that kid is magnanimous, with so many of us here, he won't be wrongly accused. If he dares to shirk responsibility, he must have a guilty conscience. Just let the Tiger Sovereign take care of him." Venerable Five Desires was only one person, so how could he suppress so many people who harbored evil intentions? Moreover, his mind was filled with resentment. He knew that Chen Ong couldn't be underestimated, and he wanted him to embarrass the Venerable Tiger. Therefore, he looked at the noisy people with resentment, symbolically obstructed them a few times, and then retreated. Only Chen Ong was left facing the abandoned disciples of the Heaven-Lude cult. Only Lady Myriad Miao, Su Feinyang, who wanted to befriend Chen Ong, stood beside him and comforted the crowd. However, Supreme Tiger laughed loudly and suddenly slapped Chen Ang's face. He had used 70 to 80% of his strength in this slap. With his strong body, he wanted to destroy most of Chen Ang's physical body and destroy the future of this kid who seemed to have a good aptitude, so that he wouldn't come to seek revenge in the future. He had an even more ruthless plan in his mind. After restraining Chen Ong, he would shatter his dantian and qi si with his palm. Then, he would secretly plant the black silk in his soul, preventing him from attaining Tao even if he had a great fortune. Chen Ong just smiled coldly, and a blood-red Lianhua appeared in the void, holding Supreme Tiger's palm. Behind his head, 2 blood-red sword rays appeared. He glanced at the crowd and said coldly, "Is it not good to be alive? Why do you want to die?" Beside him, Su Feinyang's expression changed slightly. She quickly stopped him and said, "Fellow Taoist River Styx, please bear with it for now and seek revenge in the future." She was so anxious that she could not even maintain her smooth and slick demeanor. She would rather offend the Honorable Tiger Force and the others in order to preserve her friendship with Chen Ong. It could be seen that she thought highly of Mingi, the rising star of the younger generation, and did not want him to suffer a calamity. She did not want him to lose some of his confidence to Faisame. "Do you think this bunch of useless people are worthy of me bearing with them?" "For her sake," Chen Ong replied. The 2 blood-red sword rays behind his head had already moved. The moment the sword rays flashed, there was a myriad of phenomena. With the identity of River Styx, it was not convenient for him to use his previous swordsmanship. He could only use the murderous aura from the Blood Sea, in line with the Tao of Heaven, to draw a sword that was traceless like an antelope's horn. However, it was filled with murderous intent, completely different from the carefree and unrestrained Milky Way from before. At first, Supreme Tiger could still laugh, but when the sword ray flew across the sky like a river of blood, carrying a tinge of indifference and ruthlessness, as if the Tao of Heaven was going to end all things and the end of everything in the world was death, he was so terrified that he couldn't speak. Before the sword ray could break through the dark cloud formed by the mystical Een Beast banner, Supreme Tiger had already sensed a murderous tribulation entangling his vital spirit. The thick dark cloud could not stop the weak sword ray. It was twisted by the blood-red sword ray and fell to the ground together with Supreme Tiger's 6 Sons Vulture, turning into a small gray banner. Chapter 499. Su Feinyang's expression changed drastically. She cast a transcendent artifact to conceal herself and quietly pulled on Chen Ang's sleeve, saying, "Fellow Taoist River Styx, why are you so reckless? This Supreme Tiger Vigor is not alone. He has a few senior and junior brothers, all of whom are powerful and violent. It's fine if you humiliate him, but now that you've killed him, how can they not hold a grudge against you? If you run away with me now, they might not be able to stop you in time in their panic, and I won't be able to save you even if it's too late." Chen Ong smiled. "They are just a bunch of stray dogs. Even when Celestial Obscenity Cult Master was around, they were not valued at all, so how can they be worthy of my sword?" Su Feinyang wanted to persuade him again, but Lord Skinny had already regained his senses and shouted, Little brat, how dare you? He lifted the Supreme Tiger Vigor's corpse and sneered, I'm going to use the demon fire to refine your soul for 300 years and let you die a horrible death. With a shrill howl, he turned into a demonic shadow and pounced forward, but he was trapped by the 5 penta-ene white-boned gods summoned by Chen-Ong. The 5 white skeletons trapped a black shadow, and Lord Skinny was about to cast a powerful spell from the mystic Ene scripture, but how could he know how powerful the spell cultivated by Chen-Ang's blood river was? He was only concerned about the 5 avatar heavenly demons, and was ambushed by the faceless heavenly demon. His body stiffened, and one of his bones was snatched away by the white-boned god, and all his blood essence was consumed. Chen-Ong didn't even look at this person, and instead, he went straight to the others in the hall and said with a smile, You are all trash, what use do I have for you? Why don't you pledge your allegiance to me and become materials for me to refine into a god? That way, your bodies of flesh and blood won't be in vain, and you won't bring shame to the demonic path. Such arrogant words caused Lord 5 Aphrodisiac's face to fall. Many of the cultivators in the hall were enraged and were about to attack. All of them circulated their magic and took out all sorts of magic treasures. They wanted to teach Chen-Ong a lesson. Chen-Ong rubbed his hands together, and blood flames sprayed out, burning everything in sight. A nameless karmic fire burned through the 9 layers of void, turning the great hall into a sea of fire. The others tried their best to save themselves, but Chen-Ong only stepped on the red lotus-like blood flames. 2 beams of sword light twined around him, killing everyone in sight. His sword techniques were filled with killing intent, and no one could stop him. In just 2 jumps, the ground was already littered with corpses. Venerable One of 5 Obsessions was afraid that he would really kill everyone, so he quickly stood up and stopped him. Fellow Taoist river Styx, many of these people have extraordinary backgrounds. You must not kill them indiscriminately, or else, you will be doomed in the future due to the entanglement of karma. Chen-Ong laughed loudly and said, It's just karma, what's there to worry about? I'm not asking for peace in this world, I'm asking for the great world to be filled with weapons and murderous tribulations. If I kill everyone in this world, I will be able to seize the position of the Azura demon cult's leader. Why not be happy? Every person I kill is a tribulation, and every tribulation is a cultivation. You fear tribulations like a tiger, but I love these murderous tribulations the most. Help me achieve the Tao. As soon as he finished speaking, he laughed coldly. Venerable One of 5 Obsessions felt an indescribable coldness in his heart, and he suddenly took out his protective magic treasure. However, he was caught off guard by a sword behind him, and it cut him in half at the waist. His corporeal body turned into blood light, and just as the 2 pieces of blood light were about to merge back together, a fierce killing intent suddenly erupted. This sword chi was like his nemesis, and even his blood god's sun body couldn't heal it. In fear, Venerable One of 5 Obsessions turned into 2 beams of blood light, and he didn't dare to turn back to stop Chen-Ong. He could faintly hear a voice in the air, He's crazy. He's a madman. River Styx was excited from killing, and he released his primordial spirit from his corporeal body. It was an 800 miles long blood river, and it pounced on the sword lights. The 2 blood-red sword lights suddenly grew 100 times larger, and their tails were 800 feet long. As they moved, the protective magic treasures of those people were cut in half by the sword lights. No matter how strong their corporeal bodies were, or even their primordial spirit and Ene spirit, as long as they were grazed by the sword lights, they would immediately lose their lives. At first, some of the demons and heretics on the scene said, River Styx, are you crazy? I'm a true disciple of the West Pole cult, can you afford to offend me? Su Feinyang's expression changed drastically, and she said to Chen-Ong, The West Pole cult has 6 supreme elders, and their cultivation is at the celestial realm. They're a great cult from overseas, you must not. Before she could finish her sentence, The disciple who claimed to be from the West Pole cult fell to the ground, and he had already turned into a corpse. Then, there were the Western Devil cult, Southern Devil cult, Lianshan cult, and a disciple from Mount Wutai in the past. They were all killed by Chen Ang's sword and burned to death. Only then did they realize that this river Styx was a killing talent that had not been seen for thousands of years, and he was a terrifying person who killed without batting an eyelid. When the remaining people saw how ruthless he was, someone begged for mercy. "Fellow Taoist, every wrong has its perpetrator, and every debt has its debtor. We don't want to make things difficult for you, but please spare our lives." Before he could finish his words, another blood-red sword light brushed past his chest, slicing his stomach open, and he died. Only then did everyone understand that this young man who claimed to be River Styx really wanted to kill everyone. Immediately, someone stepped forward and joined forces with many loose immortals who could protect themselves from the karmic fire of the Red Lotus. They looked out and helped each other, vaguely forming a battle formation. One of the loose immortals in the lead shouted, "Fellow Taoists, let's get rid of this madman together." They unleashed their best treasures at the same time. The abandoned disciple of heaven lasciviousness took out the mystical beast gathering formation. Countless ferocious beasts and fierce spirits pounced out from the formation, trying to trap Chen Ong. Chen Ong just laughed and said, "The path of immortality is still alive, and the great path is easy to kill. All living things end with death. It can be seen that this heaven and earth cannot allow you to live for so long. All of you are going against the heavens, stealing the Tao to live, and going against the laws of heaven. Your sins are unforgivable. All of you die." He only made the sword light even more ferocious. The two sword lights merged with his primordial divinity and turned into a river of blood that was 800 miles long. Hu Jiaojiao cried out in terror, "Blood River Formation." The mystical beast gathering formation formed by dozens of people was suppressed by the river of blood. The dozens of heterodox cultivators couldn't even make a sound before they were swallowed by the river of blood. Two inscriptions could be vaguely seen in the two sword lights. One was Yuan-Tu and the other was Avicii. They were like two lines of blood swimming in the river of blood, killing the people who were suppressed inside one by one. In just a few rounds, more than 10 people were killed, and the remaining people were scared out of their wit. When Yuan-Tu's sword reached a woman, he heard her shout, "Fellow Taoist River Styx! Fellow Taoist River Styx! We'll definitely meet again. Please spare my life. I'm willing to swear a great oath to be your servant." Chen Ong saw that it was Hu Jiaojiao, the abandoned disciple of Red Body Cult. He smiled and said, "If you can take a sword from me, I might be able to use you." However, with a flash of the sword light, the beauty's head fell to the ground. Chen Ong then shook his head and sighed. "I wanted to spare you, but you're useless." The man in hemp clothes was disheartened and didn't want to beg for mercy anymore. He was also killed by Avicii's sword light. Chen Ong just frowned. "You don't even have the courage to fight. You deserve to die." He then said, "The Blood River Formation is so ferocious. If all of you die in it, you'll definitely turn into living creatures in the Blood River. You'll be doomed eternally, and you won't even have the chance to reincarnate and cultivate again. Why aren't you fighting back?" As expected, a few more people pounced at Chen Ong angrily. However, they were killed by the flying sword midway. They were still cursing before they died. Chen Ong then nodded and said, "Only then will the soul be majestic and more useful." Chapter 500. In this unorthodox sect meeting, Chen Ong burned countless people to death with a single fire, countless vengeful souls were left under the sword ray, and countless more were suppressed by the Blood River Formation. When he first arrived, the hall was filled with distinguished guests, but after being killed by him, only a few people were left. No one knew how many had died. He was really decisive in killing and merciless with his sword. The people present were either highly skilled, and had not died in the hands of Chen Ong, or like Su Feinyang, their fate had not run out. When they looked at Chun Ong, there was no longer a trace of contempt in their eyes. It was as if they were looking at an ancient, ferocious beast. However, Chun Ong looked around at the dead people around him and could not help but sigh. I knew this place was bad, but the Reverend of 5 Obsessions set the meeting in this hall. The last time when Old Man Bai Yen held a birthday banquet, the entire place was in chaos. Countless distinguished guests died in this hall, leaving only the Reverend of 5 Obsessions, the abandoned disciple of Red Body Cult, Hu Jiao Jiao, and Mount Hua Sex Ma Yi. Today, the 4 of us have met with another bad omen. Even the 2 Taoist friends who survived last time are also in trouble. When Su Feinyang and the others heard this, they could not help but curse in their hearts. Isn't it you who killed them? But after such a huge change, no one dared to say anything, they could only curse in secret. It was Su Feinyang who was smooth in dealing with people. She smiled and said, "So there is such a change, but I wonder what this Old Man Bai Yen is facing?" Chun Ong sneered and said, "When I first entered the hall, I heard that there were guests from Black Sand Island. I thought that the Old Man Bai Yan's birthday banquet was not a good omen and feared that there would be a bloody disaster. Sure enough, he was facing his doom and was blinded by lard. He actually used me as a trick and forced me to perform a spell for them to see. I only know how to kill people. How would I know anything about auspicious spells? Seeing that they were so kind to me, I sent them one by one to the west to fulfill their wishes." Even if Su Feinyang had a clever mind, she couldn't laugh anymore. She smiled awkwardly and roared in her heart, "You're the one who did it." The others looked at each other and confirmed that there was no guilt or regret in Chun Ang's tone. His heart trembled as he said, "He's really a killing talent that hasn't been seen in 1,000 years. From what he said, I'm afraid he doesn't have the slightest bit of regret in his heart. I'm afraid that the lives of many people here are just like tiles and bricks in his eyes, worthless and worthless. If I go against Mount Amei, I can rely on this person's character. I've seen many evil sects and devil cultivators. They can be considered as people who kill people like flies, but those they kill are only mortals. Who would kill people like this? How many cultivators were there in the world? If he were to continue killing like this, the 4 seas would be emptied out." From his words, it sounded like he wasn't satisfied. A person like this is really hard to grasp. I wonder if it's the right decision to ask him to go against Mount Amei? Seeing that Chun Ong released many corpses from the Blood River Formation, he sighed and said, "A few days ago, when I became friends with the other Taoists, I could see that Hu Jiao Jiao's soul is majestic. The Taoist in the hemp robe has a strong body and is a good material for refining gods and devils. And the blood of the Reverend of 5 Desires is the best. It's a pity that I didn't see him." What he meant was that he still wanted the Reverend of 5 Desires to be here and let him collect his blood. Everyone present felt as if there was a blade on their backs. They were all people with good karmic luck, and they could faintly sense that there would be a great calamity if they left. That was why they restrained themselves and didn't move. If they moved, they would most likely become the material of another fiend god. Chun Ong used his mana to pick up many corpses from the ruins of the hall and threw them into the Blood River Formation. One could vaguely see blood clouds gathering and the blood river churning. One of the corpses fell and was instantly sucked dry by the true water of blood to be refined into a strange blood deity. It was just that the blood deity was not as ferocious as the original, but it was more secretive. It was a strange creature that lived on the blood river. The rest of the corpses were corroded by the blood river and turned into flying zombies. They soaked in the blood river to increase their grade. These were all materials for refining gods and devils. There were also the evil souls of the heterodox. They roared and rolled in the blood river. Their original consciousness had already dissipated, leaving only a pure demonic consciousness. They were cunning and ruthless. They were the forbidden Een devils. Among them, Hu Jiao, Supreme Tiger, Supreme Thin Bone, and the other evildoers of the Heaven Lust cult had their souls infused with evil energy. They were the toughest and most compatible with the demonic consciousness of the Een devils. They were the best materials for refining gods and devils. Chen Ong had already picked out 7 of them and soaked them in the blood river to cultivate them. He was preparing to refine a type of superior god and devil called the 7 Saints of the Sky. Their mystic treasures and evil items such as the Dark Beast banners, the 9 Een spirit swords, and their natal gods and devils were also soaked in the blood river to disintegrate the remnant souls they had harmed. The impurities and evil energy were cleansed by the blood river and used as materials to refine gods and devils. Another bit of his natal true spirit settled at the bottom of the blood river. Nourished by the blue sky, yellow springs formed by the true water of the blood river, it slowly grew stronger. Every bit of his natal true spirit was incomplete. Borrowing a bit of the profound mysteries of the blood river, he opened a door and went into reincarnation. The blood river formation could also refine the blue sky underworld and make it even purer. Thinking about it carefully, using these heretical people as materials to refine gods and devils would definitely be more useful than their own bodies. Not only would they be able to command them like their own arms, they would never betray them. Moreover, their transcendence energy would be more than 10 times stronger than their own heterogeneous transcendence energy. This made Chen Ong look at Su Feinyang with a hint of eagerness. Of course, Su Feinyang did not think that this fellow Taoist River Styx was someone who was obsessed with color. If that was the case, then his gaze was worth discussing. Su Feinyang felt a chill down her spine. She forced a smile and said, "Such a change is truly regrettable. Fellow Taoist River Styx, is there anything else you want us to do? If there's nothing else, Feinyang should take her leave." Su Feinyang's words struck a chord in the hearts of the others. They recalled that the fire in their pill cauldrons had not been extinguished, that they had dozed off while watching their mounts and let them run away, that the cauldron of pills was still on fire, and that a fellow Taoist had invited them to a banquet, so it was not appropriate for them to continue bothering them. Chen Ong urged them to stay with great hospitality. The birth of the extraterrestrial devil is a major event for us Taoists. River Styx is truly grateful that so many Taoists have come all the way here. Now that the major event has not even begun, it is truly a pity that so many Taoists have already sacrificed themselves for it. Fortunately, they are all useless people who could not withstand a single blow. It's fine if they die. The remaining Taoists are the pillars of our great cause, so you must not decline. With Su Feinyang as the leader, the Taoists all complained, "My mount has gone to the mortal world to eat people." The pill cauldron toppled and burned a mountain. The gold pill on the cauldron is a matter of life and death. The one who invited me to the banquet is the green-robed patriarch. If I don't go, he will eat my heart. Such an important matter cannot be delayed. Please forgive me, fellow Taoist River Styx. Chen Ong sighed. If that's the case, it's not appropriate for me to stay any longer. Chapter 501. Hearing the words bloody calamity, the few people who survived felt their limbs go weak. How could they dare to move again? Cultivators would never forget. Who wouldn't remember the last 2 times Chen Ong predicted a bloody calamity, and what happened to those people? Dozens of breaths later, no one dared to move their feet and stood there in a daze. Heavenly Sound Novel 2. Only Su Feinyang was brave enough to ask, "Fellow Taoist, do you need us to stay? If there's anything we can help with, we will not hesitate to help." Chen Ong sighed. Many of our fellow Taoists here have met with misfortune. Now that there are only a few of us, how can we fight against the righteous path? I'll have to ask fellow Taoists to find some capable helpers, some useful fellow Taoists to help us. However, this sea region is vast, so it's inconvenient for us to communicate. Fortunately, I have the Blood River Soul Tracking technique here, which is the most convenient and can sense us from tens of thousands of miles away. Please accept it, fellow Taoists. Behind him, several blood shadows flew out from the Blood River formation and entered the dantian of the people. The others were afraid of his ruthlessness and didn't dare to stop him. They only wanted to find someone to break his spell after they escaped, but they didn't dare to turn against him face to face. After all, the latter still had a chance of survival, but the former had dozens of seniors as proof, so it was a path of no return. The blood talismans formed by the blood sea true water entered the dantian of the few people and melted into their blood and chi, disappearing without a trace. This made these people even more fearful. They weren't afraid of its complicated and hard to break, but it was hidden and hard to find, secretly destroying their foundation. Seeing that they had submitted, Chun-Ong smiled and waved the black banner, saying, "This is much more convenient. Fellow Taoists, please return as soon as possible. I'll first set up a large formation on the eye of the sea, and the Blood River will be eye-catching for 800 miles. Of course, if fellow Taoists don't return after a long time and get lost, I'll wave this banner to guide your souls. This is also one of the benefits of the blood talismans, it's extremely convenient." As the black banner shook, the few people felt dizzy and their souls were about to leave their bodies. Their expressions changed drastically, knowing that Chun-Ong had planted a powerful technique on them. However, they didn't know that the blood talismans were the seed talismans of the blood god, planted by Chun-Ong and secretly corroded their primordial spirit. As time passed, their original selves would be erased and they would become one of Chun-Ang's blood god avatars. Other than Su Feinyang, who Chun-Ong wanted to use, the others would just die a little slower. After all, they would have to face a bloody disaster sooner or later. Putting aside the fact that these heretical people had gone their separate ways, Chun-Ong waited for them to leave before refining the souls of the many heretical beings that had died tragically, as well as the bodies of the cultivators. He used the orthodox Azura magic to refine countless gods and demons. Among them, there were 59 manifestation gods and demons, 36 formless gods and demons, 24 refined zombies, and countless demons and evil spirit. He also collected many evil spirits and devils and dismantled the black silk banner of the mystical beast gathering banner. He used the true water of the blood sea to purify it and understood a kind of soul-weaving technique, which could use the 7 emotions and 6 desires of the soul, as well as the various distracting thoughts and devil thoughts to refine a type of blood-soul thread. The souls that were harmed by the demons were purified by Chun-Ong with the yellow springs, and these were the leftovers, so he didn't lack any. However, he wanted to refine the 9 heavens 10 earths shape and formless celestial demon drawing. Other than the 108 formless celestial demons, he still needed 3,000 blood soul threads to refine the drawing. This was a huge amount. If it were mortal materials, he would have to collect countless evil spirits, and not even 1 thread out of 100 people. Fortunately, Chun-Ong had the yellow springs to purify the countless distracting thoughts in the soul, leaving only a bit of the true spirit for reincarnation, so the efficiency was the highest. If it were the souls of cultivators, he only lacked 5 souls of rogue immortals. The more Chun-Ong thought about it, the more he regretted letting the Lord of 5 Desires escape. Although his flesh was rotting in the bowl, if he kept half of the Lord of 5 Desires' soul, he wouldn't die. He could even make the old monster Xian Yuan the Great bleed to replenish his soul, and he could earn more. The formless celestial demon drawing has 108 heretic gods and demons. Among them, there should be 36 formless celestial demons, including the 7 saints of heaven confusion, the 7 emotions and 6 desires celestial demons, the 9 children ghost mother celestial demons, the burning heaven raging sky demon, and a total of 18 other type. Although the level of attainment is still low, the drawing is complete. However, there are only 59 out of the 72 formless celestial demons. The main reason is that the red lotus karmic fire burned too fiercely, and many of the heretic cultivators' corpses were destroyed. Fortunately, the living souls are still here, so the loss is not serious. In the future, remember, when killing people, you need to use the blood river formation. The efficiency of collecting souls and refining corpses is high. Previously in the Great Hall, I killed many third-rate heretic cultivators. Although the living souls were collected, the corpses were wasted and destroyed. That's why the harder to refine formless celestial demons were gathered first. Although we of the path of diabolism do things recklessly, we also need to be frugal. After killing people, the corpses, living souls, blood essence, and magic must be used separately. It's the same as learning how to be meticulous when collecting necromancy magic materials. Chen Ong carefully recorded them down. On a blood jade that was condensed from a drop of blood sea true water, he imprinted his insights and insight. Then, he conveniently recorded hundreds of magic spells that were used to process raw materials such as souls and zombies. After these basic materials were refined by Blood River, they would become the raw materials for refining gods and demons. The diagram of the formless celestial demons of the 9 heavens and 10 earths was a Taoist technique for refining gods and demons of the mystic Orthodox sect. It was cleverly modified by Chen Ong, adding a different kind of ingenuity. The path of diabolism actually allowed him to comprehend the method of combining several kinds of gods and demons together to form a large formation, or to combine into an even more ferocious god and demon. This was the true meaning of the formless celestial demons. As for the 9 heavens and 10 earths, it was the 19 formations that Chen Ong comprehended, forming the 9 heavens realm and the 10 levels of hell. Together with the 108 formless celestial demons, it had an even more unfathomable power. Chen Ong had already comprehended that when the path of creation of celestial demons was cultivated to the peak, he could create a kind of living soul out of thin air. This living soul was born with a demonic nature, just like Azura, a natural demon. The only difference was the type and the natural magic they were born with, but they were also destined to be the natural enemy of Taoist cultivators. The formless celestial demons have yet to be formed. I only lack the 13 corpses of Taoist cultivators with a foundation, and the number of Master-level living souls. I originally wanted to wait for the few blood gods to hatch. By then they should already be in their own cave abodes. Then, I would manipulate them to invite the nearby Taoist cultivators and use the blood gods to kill them all. But now that the South Sea is about to set up the formation, where would I have the time to wait for it? I wonder if there are enough Taoist aristocratic families on the nearby islands? As Chen Ong thought about it, he pinched his fingers and calculated that the number of Master cultivators on the nearby islands was enough. It was just that he had killed some at Old Man White Crag's birthday banquet previously, and some fled in fear. Although the remaining ones were also evil, there was still a chance of survival. If it was the people of the righteous path, they would still have some reservations, but Chen Ong had the body of a sky demon. Why would he care so much? He said, "According to my calculations, there should be a bloody calamity here." The heavens immediately responded and killed all those people, becoming Chen Ang's calamity.